Welcome to the Wednesday Club. This is
our theme song that is.
You can't do
the real one.
You have to pay for it if you do it.
No, but I'm putting spaces in there.
References for our sake, not yours, audience.
This is our Pride Month week. This is our Pride episode for the Wednesday Club,
Pride
which
Wednesday.
I've been really looking forward to for a long time. And we got maybe the best possible special guest today. We are so honored to have you here. Marc Andreyko.
Wow, you guys have a low bar for
I
greatness.
was about to give you some shade, but they couldn't show up, so we got you.
Yeah, I was going to say, how many people turned it down? It's like
don't
when
talk
Barry
about that.
Pepper gets a lead role in a movie.
Oh.
Now, we will get into a lot of your specific credits later, but if you would briefly introduce yourself for our audience.
Sure, my name's Marc Andreyko. I've been writing comics now for this will be my 24th year
Oh,
of
man.
writing comics, which is terrifying.
Doesn't look like you've been writing over.
Well, I'm a
23.
doughy middle-aged guy, so I look like I'm like writers. Stock footage photos are like me going with a pencil. I've written for every major company. I've written for DC, Marvel. I created a character with Jesus Saiz called Manhunter, which was a new version of that. At DC.
I'm not even on camera. I'm just going to scoot them in. Some beautiful books by
I
Marc.
can't hold them myself. That's just
Here.
Here, my assistant, you hold them. I've written. I just finished writing Batman 66 meets Wonder Woman 77 with Jeff Parker,
Out
which
in
is the
stores
first
today.
time Linda Carter and Adam West's characters meet.
That's so.
I
fucking
did
right. So cool.
I did a run on Batwoman. What else have I done? I wrote a Deadpool Wolverine annual that keeps getting reprinted, so thank you, Ryan Reynolds. Yeah, I've been doing this for a long time.
Also?
Oh, yes, Doctor Strange. My first gig was with P. Craig Russell. That's Doctor Strange, What Is It That Disturbs You, Stephen? It's now been reprinted in the graphic novel.
He has a problem. He has a.
Oh,
real-
he's aware of my problem. I brought this just because I want Mark to sign it. So, sign it for me after the show, Mark.
$5.
Okay, I'll give you 10.
We will be getting also into this, but this is a very special project that you came up with. And you know what? I was planning to do the history first and talk about you second, but I am too
We're
excited
here.
by the pre-show that we did and the wonderful you were telling.
was so
if I
exciting.
can ask you again to talk a little bit about it and launch right into it.
Sure.
Can you tell us about Love
Yeah,
is Love?
Love is Love is an anthology graphic novel, 144 pages with over 350 creators. It was designed to raise money. It was designed, well, mostly as a sort of catharsis for my grief after the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando last June. And as a kid who grew up in the 80s of We Are the World, it was like, if you have a skill set in the arts, I'm like, let's do something. So that morning I woke up and was just feeling horrified and sick. And I just Facebook messaged him, like, comics community, let's do something. If anybody wants to do this book, I'll organize it. And less than 36 hours later, DC was on board, IDW was on board. I had two of the best editors in comics volunteering their time, and then 2 weeks after that, we were in progress. And then December 28th, the book hit the stands and debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. J.K. Rowling was gracious enough to let us use a Harry Potter quote that Jim Lee drew, so it's the first time that Harry Potter's ever appeared and probably the only time. Patty
Happy
Jenkins.
Harry Potter 20, by the way.
Yeah, Patty Jenkins, who is everyone now knows her name. She's a household name, well deserved for the brilliant Wonder Woman movie. She wrote the introduction because she had worked on Monster in Orlando and had a tie to the community. And it's just a book sort of expressing everyone's grief and shock that someone would hate themselves so much and be threatened by people who love each other that would manifest that way. And I have lots of issues about mental health in this country and gun control in this country, but I wanted to do a book that was about celebrating love because 49 people died because they were just living their lives honestly. And that, if you're threatened by people being in love, you need to get some help because I want everyone to be in love. I want what did Baz Luhrmann's tagline in Moulin Rouge? There's nothing better than loving someone and being loved in
The
return.
greatest thing you'll ever know.
So yeah, thank you. So why I literally don't understand where that came from, and I believe that the guy was probably a deeply closeted homosexual. If you did research into the killer, he grew up in a very religious, very extreme religious household, and apparently his father said horrible things to him his whole life, and you see how that much inner hatred. I'm glad he's dead because he did a horrible, unforgivable thing. But part of me wishes someone had been there to give him a hug. I just saw the movie My Friend Dahmer, which deals a lot of this in the same way, which is based on an amazing graphic novel by Durf Backdurf. If you haven't read it, it's a spectacular book. It's not a horror movie. Durf, a fellow Clevelander, went to high school with Jeffrey Dahmer, and this movie is about them in high school. And another movie where it's easy sometimes to write off people that do horrible things as evil, dark villains with no. Dahmer, like Eileen Wuornos and Monster, if one person had been awake, it could have changed things. And that's why these stories disturb us. It's easy to say there's a monster. We can write them off. But it's and we tend to we're more connected than ever with technology, but we're less connected in reality. So I went off on a real big tangent there.
No, that was a good
but that's why we have
tangents.
But so you got this put together, you got it out. It's the proceeds have been going entirely to charity, I believe.
Yeah, every dime. Starting with the 6th printing, we're going to be doing a new charity every year.
Nice.
Because when there are charities set up and nonprofits for specific tragic events, the way that the government and taxes and stuff and tax exemptions work, they're only able to be set up for a very short period of time. That was me. Right, I'm sorry, I'm a bad guest. And so far we've raised over $200,000. Yeah, which was kind of insane. And I was mentioning to you guys, we're talking to at least 7 foreign publishers about doing foreign editions, translations of this with material of local artists in those communities to give money to local charities, LGBT charities around the world. So to me, the fact that the book came out and it's printed correctly is a miracle. The fact that it's good is even more of a testament to everyone who volunteered their time. I mean, we have Grant Morrison, Matt Bomer, Taryn Killam, Mark Millar, Brian Bendis, Jason Aaron. There's hundreds of people I'm not picking. Carr Andrews, Jim Lee. I got to write a piece for George Perez, which the 6-year-old me was like, what?
Marguerite Bennett's in here, Kat Staggs is in here, Steve Orlando, Gail Simone, Paul Dini, Morgan Spurlock, Ming Doyle, Jay Edidin, Jonathan Hickman. It's an incredible. Patton Oswalt.
In addition to every comic book artist you could ever think of, Brandon Peterson, Sean Phillips, Mike Oming, George Perez, Jim Lee, Dan Parent.
Yeah, we've got Dan Parent here just as a quick look. We'll be talking about
Kevin
him a
Keller,
little more in terms of
we did an
milestones.
Archie episode, so
cool.
we've been educating our audience on the wonders that is Kevin.
And also what is sort of unprecedented is both DC gave us use of all their characters. The Will Eisner estate let us use the Spirit. Archie let us use their characters. And when you think about when we were kids, 25 years ago, thinking that DC and IDW and Archie would allow characters in a book of this scope, that was unheard of, not because of homophobia or anything, but just because it was just
so much red tape.
There's so much to tie their shoes.
Yeah, and this came together so quickly, and I can't thank Ted Adams and Chris Ryle at IDW enough, or Diane Nelson at DC, because when I reached out to Diane, she called me and says, "Whatever you need, we'll do it."
It was. I will say, I was fortunate enough to be following you on Facebook, and I mentioned this earlier in the show. It was a potent enough Facebook message that I've never really forgotten finding it and reading it and going, oh my God, this is the beginning of something interesting.
Yeah, I remember having that exact same reaction, going like, oh my God, this is going to be something.
And the book itself is, beyond even what it has done, and what it has done is spectacular. The book itself is a unique.
I would like to pick a fight with you.
Okay.
I got my copy of Love is Love, ordered a ton for the store, and then because I guess I'm an idiot, I took it to a Starbucks to read. So, cut
Like
to me
idiots.
weeping openly in a Starbucks. Why you make it so good?
I'll say my goal was to reread it for this show, because every
luck.
week, and I got maybe 30 pages in because I had to stop every 6 pages because I was upsetting my girlfriend by my
I remember,
curled up fetal position on the couch, going no too much.
I remember
too much.
you warned me. You were like, it's a tough read. You're gonna cry every other page, and I was like, I'm a pretty tough guy, and then I opened the first page and was like, "Oh God, this is tough already."
There's a couple of them that I can't look at that are really get me. Carr Andrews' piece in particular just guts me. It's a piece of a young black boy hugging his mom roast.
I know the
and the only text in it is the last tweet a guy sent to his mother from the bathroom at Pulse before he died.
Oh God, are we doing this? Are we doing this to people?
Yeah,
I feel really bad. I know you all have shit to do today, and I really apologize to be dropping this on you, but here we are.
But I wanted it to be that way.
God. It has to be.
I said to a bunch of there was one anonymous person who said, "Oh, this book's coming out 6 months after. You think anyone's going to care?" And my first response was, "You're awful. You're a garbage fire." And my second response was, the moment this doesn't hurt is the moment we as a society need to be eliminated by the media, because we can't become inured to events like this. This wasn't just an LGBT tragedy. This was a human tragedy.
Yeah.
We got to see people, parents and loved ones and friends and stuff that this humanized it in such a way. And to be able to, I say it was a privilege to be able to do this book, to honor these people, because I can't imagine the loss, because they were all kids for the most part. There was one woman, Brenda McCool. She was 49, survived cancer twice, was the mother of 11. She stepped in front of the gunman and saved her son's life and died. Jeez. Damon Lindelof and Lenil, you did that piece, and it's like, it just is what it is. It should be sad. It should be a call to arms, especially in the way the world is now, that we have a president that said, I don't exist according to the new census, a president who said, I love the gays, but didn't acknowledge the LGBT Pride Month, a president who is just a vile, vile, vile man. We need this to hurt so people wake up and get involved, because and I don't want to get too political on a comic book show. But we need to pursue hold our government responsible with the same passion we do when Marvel has Spider-Man's costume wrong in an issue.
Well, and that point, hold each other responsible.
Yes,
and there's little something I actually want to ask you about this book, because this was a very powerful moment for me rereading it. Is the very first page is the in memoriam. And one of the things I did the first time I shared this book with somebody is they were like, well, who worked on it? And I'm like, oh God, I'm going to find the list. Hold on it. And I immediately turned to the first page going, this is a list of people who worked. No, this is not the list of people who worked on it. Oh my God.
Well, that needed to be first.
And it's because of its placement, it's just, you find it over and over again, and it really...
Well, and also, too, when you look at it, the length of that list, you're like, you thought, oh, there's 100 creators in this book. That's the list,
there's
and it's 49
there's 100 people this book was for at that point, and there are so many things in this book that are so well built to keep you invested on this very visceral emotional level.
Well, and the response to it has been more than I could have hoped for. I mean, we were number one on Amazon for a very long time. And IDW said we're going to keep the book in print, which is awesome, because I do there are a lot of pieces that are specifically about Orlando, but there are also a lot of pieces that transcend that. There are pieces like Chris Gage and his wife did a piece about a gay couple that they knew that had adopted a bunch of special needs kids in North Carolina, which is important on so many levels, because North Carolina is trying to be Florida now. Yeah, and Andre Bresson, who's the artist of Birthright, drew that, and that's a very personal piece.
Well, and it's just like the story of how like that guy was suicidal until he found something that he was good at and enjoyed doing, and then he did it more and more and more and turned it into a multi-million-dollar industry. Like.
And Scott Snyder wrote a great piece about when he worked at Disney World in Florida.
Oh my God, that was
and Sean
so good.
and Jock did the piece for it. It's a beautiful personal piece. Tony Bedard talked about how when he lived in Florida, he and his buddies would always go to gay clubs, and that's where he met his wife, because he could approach a woman without it. And there's all those personal stories are what makes it matter to me. And I wanted a wide berth of gay, straight, bi, trans, different genders, because I didn't want it to be. There was a place for a book that's all LGBT creators. But I wanted a book that transcended political and wanted it to be loved. Because I've gotten messages from people who were conservatives who read this book, and I'm like, thank you for doing this book. So I wasn't out to convert politics. I was out to touch people, because we're all more connected than we're different.
As someone who grew up in very conservative Texas and attended seminary and stuff like that, there was so much.
No, so you had a lot of gay friends.
Yeah. But there was a lot in that book that I really appreciated, because it was like, I grew up around those people. At some point I was that person, and was able to grow out of it. And there was a piece in there, I can't remember who wrote it, but they talked about how they were raised seeing the world one way, but then because they kept an open mind, they were able to kind of see the truth of relationships and love in front of them and be like, the stuff that these people are teaching doesn't equal what I'm seeing, so I'm going to forget this and move on to that, but this still exists.
And there's a tremendous range of pieces, like what you were saying, a tremendous variety within the pieces that you gathered for this, where some are just about the feeling of devastation, some are angry, some are thoughtful, some are funny, and a lot of them, like the one about getting to the gentleman, whoever wrote the one where that was how he met his wife. Who was that?
Tony Bedard. Carl Moline is the artist on that.
Some of them, they're about joy and life and celebrating and love, and it's all in this book, and it takes you on quite a ride.
Well, once again, I mentioned this when we did the Facebook Live thing. The rhythm of the book is completely responsible from Jamie Rich, the DC editor, and Sarah Gatos, who was the IDW editor. I left it to them. I said, you guys are maestros at what you do. I will let you put the pages in order. I'll read it, and if I have an issue, I'll bring it up. But that's what you do every day. I'm not going to tell you how to do your job. And they're the real heroes in the book, because
it's a spectacular rhythm.
They were working. They have full-time jobs at DC and IDW, editing anywhere between 10 and 15 projects a month, and they both did this on their own time. So it really is a book that is kind of like, much like Wonder Woman's origin, her original origin, something brought to life from love. This was totally brought to life from love.
Yeah.
And I will admit, as somebody who does a lot of stuff on the internet, I don't know how you guys feel about this. And this
on the internet?
I know, weird, isn't it?
One last thing, I'm going to cut you off.
Yeah, no, do it.
If this is available on Amazon.com, and if you order the digital version through Comixology and wherever else, there are 20 extra pages of material that we couldn't fit in, including.
I did not know that.
Didn't know that.
So you'll be borrowing my
Including
comics.
pieces. There's a Captain Carrot piece by Scott Shaw. There's a piece I got to write that Olivier Copiel did. There's an Amanda Connor piece that is absolutely lovely and needs to be a T-shirt. It's the 20 pages aren't deleted scenes, or 20 pages of stuff we just couldn't fit in. So there's great stuff in there. There's I'm forgetting some people. There's the 20 pages are great. So
A lot of our viewers
will
are
be picking that
Comixology
up.
kids.
so go to Comixology, buy it. Once again, all the proceeds continue to go to charity. After the fifth printing, the charity for the next calendar year is the Trevor Project, which is a great project named after a short film Jodie Foster produced about a suicidal young gay kid. They have a 24-hour hotline for LGBT adolescents, and we're going to change the charity every year until hopefully we don't need to do it anymore.
It is a thing that happens to me occasionally on the internet, and this book brought this back up pretty significantly. Of like, and I don't do this all the time because I only have so much emotional energy for a human being, especially times being what they are. I've only got so much of my brain power before I turn into a quivering mess.
I can't wait for the day when we can wake up and not be angry.
I know. I'm so.
Oh my God.
I'm so tired of being mad.
I take moments every morning, and of course, being on the internet, you get a lot of there's hate and trolling that come my way, and like a lot of it is nothing I didn't hear in high school, nothing that I'm not used to. I've got a pretty thick skin, and I don't delve into the comment sections of videos or anything like that because I'm sane. Mm-hmm. But every now and then, like somebody gets through, and like I just kind of want to have a moment of like I wish, and I want to test the theories. If I just find this person, I grab them for a second, I'm like, dude, are you all right? Mm-hmm. Like, do you need therapy? Because like I'm in therapy and it's fucking great. Mm-hmm. And like, what can I like? I feel like when was the last time anyone asked you if you're just okay, if you need something?
Well, that goes back.
Fuck, man.
That goes back to what I was talking about Jeffrey Dahmer and Moros and this is the killer in Orlando.
I wish I had the energy for all these
out.
kids. I mean, like it's so and like in real life, I can do this, and I've like had those moments in real life where like you see someone losing their shit, and you're like, do you just need a fucking drink and someone to listen to you talk about your shit and not tell you that you're being like.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, oftentimes just sit down and like, I promise I'm not gonna make fun of you. I'm not gonna tell you.
Just gonna listen.
I just saw a story.
Tell me what, man?
In Japan, you can rent Friends.
Yes.
And that sounds at first I'm like, of course that sounds very Japanese, but because that culture is so couched in stiff upper lip, it's cheap. It's free therapy. They can go talk to someone who's not going to judge them, who doesn't know their life, who can be objective. And that's the thing. I mean, most people. I don't think most people are evil. I think there's a percentage of people that occupy the White House that are pure evil. But
I've had a couple roommates, and I'm not even making a joke, that are definitely into that spectrum. But most people, I think, are just lonely.
Most people just want to live their life, be happy, and be left alone. And I think that it all for me boils down to education is the key, because when you're not educated, you're easily scared, and you're easily scared, you look for scapegoats. It's what one political party has been making their hay on for a number of years. And when you meet someone, I grew up in a very white community. I didn't have any African American friends. The only person of color in my school was an Indian boy. And there was an Asian girl.
I was about to say, boy, did you end up at the right comic book store for that moment?
But once you meet someone who's in a stereotype or a minority, you don't introduce your friends who are of color. This is my black friend, or my girlfriend, or my gay friend, or my straight male friend.
We've all got one of those.
It's the thing where that stereotype has to dissolve, or you're just garbage. Because once you know someone, that group has to dissolve, and this fear of other. I've never understood the fear of other. I've never understood the fear of knowledge. When somebody by the way, let me couch this by saying I consider myself a C+ person on the best day. So if I can do it,
I feel like I've known you long enough to back that up.
Thank you. It's not. If I can do it, it's not particularly difficult.
I think you're being a little hard on yourself.
No, he's really not. You haven't known me. For the record, we used to go to the same comic book store for years. Like, he knew me through my really goth phase.
Oh, yes.
It was a problem.
You were the Dylan Klebold of Los Angeles. Look it up. It's kind of tasty.
Don't look it up. But thank you. I love you, man.
But it's the thing where people should just be more open.
Well,
because when I learn something I didn't know, I go, oh, I didn't know that. Now I know it. That's awesome. But this demonization, people say, I bet you think you're smart, don't you? Well, actually, yeah, that's not an insult. I'm not the smartest person in the room.
I think I'm.
But I don't think I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
And I'm always, I know so many people who are smarter than me, and it's great because I learn things.
Oh, I try to surround myself with people who are only smarter than me.
Everybody
incredibly
on this
intelligent.
table teaches me things all the time,
So
and I love it.
let me ask you a question. You may not be able to answer it.
Hi.
So it's what I've always assumed. Assumed.
Oh, I missed it. What was the answer?
Never know. You don't want to know.
You don't want to know. Or maybe she does. Can you talk about the countries that are coming to you for international? Is that
Not yet.
Okay, because we have a lot of international viewers who would probably be excited about that. Is there a way for them to
Where
petition?
should they stay tuned?
We've had publishers reach out to us. I just need to get my ass in gear and talk to IDW, and talk to their foreign licensing person as to who they are. But I know that I saw the list of countries that approached IDW about it. So I don't know when those books will be rolling out or that sort of thing. But you can still get it internationally through.
So
Amazon
I mean,
as well.
but like, let's say we have like fans down in like Brazil who are like really want this, but you're not talking to Brazil. Is there any way for them to petition publishers there, or get in contact with you to ask? Or
they can either talk to I don't know who the big publishers are in Brazil. They can reach out to them. They can start Facebook stuff like saying we want a version in Brazil and do pages for that and that sort of thing. That would help. I know. I don't know if Brazil is on the list. I know a bunch of the European countries, and I know there are a couple of countries outside of Europe, but I don't know the list, so I don't want to say.
No, and I don't want to put you on that spot. I'm just trying to if there's a way for.
Are there
a fan
people
to be
from Brazil asking right
No,
now?
that's just I just made that up. I was just Brazil.
It's entirely possible that someone's like, I'm in Brazil. Where can I get this?
No, it's entirely possible. I was
Brazil, tell us.
Some of the bigger markets overseas, I think we're already in talks with specific publishers over there, like the Spains and Frances and stuff like that. I'm not sure specifically if we've locked anyone down yet, but I know there's been a lot of outreach for it. So hopefully we will. And we've already started talking about what we want to do for the 5th anniversary of the book. Because if we get these foreign editions, the foreign editions will have material of local artists. I want to get the digital material. I want to get all the foreign material.
I would love a hardcover.
I want to get a bunch of people that weren't able to contribute because they were too busy to do pieces and do a big, giant, slipcased, absolute hardcover edition. And limit it to probably 4,900 copies in honor of the 49 people who were killed. Because I would like to have everything in one place. And it would be a big, expensive thing. That, once again, is a couple of years down the line. But you have to start thinking about that stuff now because those things are, you see how the publishers release the books that are coming out in 2019.
Yeah.
We have a publisher in-house, and this thing blows our minds.
I don't either. I have no idea how it happened. I mean, but everybody lined up. The printers donated paper and press time for those printings. I mean, the only expenses for the book were shipping them to the distributor.
Wow.
So every single dime that we made went directly to charity, which is,
That's amazing.
It was the perfect storm of something really beautiful happening out of something really awful.
And such an artistic accomplishment. It is, and it is so legitimate. It is such a remarkable artistic accomplishment.
Well, I'm very proud of it. I tend to shy away from it. I kind of planted the seed, but there were a lot of gardeners who really tended it and made it what it was. So I'm part of it, and I'm very proud to kind of be the spokesperson for it. But it was on the backs of 500 people and on unfortunately the blood of 49 people that this book came to life. And it gives me hope because there's so much negativity in the genre world with Gamergate and some of the misogyny and stuff.
What that is.
And to have all these people because everyone in that book, I reached out to some of my big name friends because I did want to have some names to anchor it because I wanted the book to sell to make money. But everybody, I think every single piece in this except one was edited. Or wasn't edited, I mean. They were turned out to be. There were a couple of balloon placements that we changed for effect, but most of the stuff kind of sprung fully formed from each and every one of the creators.
Wow.
So that's why I think the radioactivity.
Did they
of
pitch you the kind of piece they wanted to do, or
it wasn't a real formal pitch cycle because there wasn't time.
Yeah.
Most of these people that I reached out to, I trusted because they're really great at what they do, and I had a bunch of people, which was fascinating because I got some blowback from some people in the LGBT community because there's so many straight white men in that. I'm like, well, there's a lot of straight white men in the world, and a lot of the straight white men had issues where they were like, I don't feel like I have anything to say. I want this to be about me. And like Jeff Jensen, who co-wrote Tomorrowland and who's an editor at known for his Lost podcast or his website during Entertainment Weekly. He wrote The Green River Killer, another great graphic novel. His piece is all about him trying to figure out, as a Christian, how to be able to explain this world to his kids and just feeling lost. And that's a valid emotion. You know, that's a valid emotion. And I wanted it to be about emotion. You know, Mark Guggenheim pulled off, I think, a miraculous feat. He's like, I want to do a thing where Batman's at the club.
Yeah,
that was story.
So
And I said to Mark, I have no doubt that you can do this and make it work. Be very careful, because those things can go bad
real easy.
And Mark wrote this piece that almost
amazing.
works like a fable, where Batman's there in the scene and he can't figure out why it happened, and the cops are like, if Batman can't find a reason or motive for this, how are we ever going to? So it became almost a fable. It wasn't Batman at a crime scene. You know, it was the metaphor there.
Or that wish fulfillment of like just the right guy.
You know, if the
like
right person, you know, the thing of, if everybody was armed, this wouldn't have happened. But that's never how it works. And it was so elegant the way he did it, and but so simple and so comic booky in the best sense of the word. It's like, you know, I'm lucky that I got a piece in this book, because there are so many great people in this book that it feels like,
and it never feels collage-y. That's the other. It's so many different people, and it never feels like that, like grandma's quilt, where it's just too many pieces.
Well, once again, going back to the editors, the rhythms of it. You know, anytime it starts veering in one direction, they take it in another direction.
I know.
You know?
Oh yeah, this one.
Oh, Francis Manapul and his wife did a beautiful, beautiful pice.
Which one?
Sorry, we're just
we're delving.
yeah.
We knew this was going to happen, because
So
this
now
book
you have
is
to buy it.
You do.
Well, speaking of,
we have never told you to actually like run out and buy.
Fickle
something.
Fandoms asks, where can we get a copy of Love Is Love?
It's in print. It's available through Diamond. So hit your local comic book store, get them to get it. It's always better to support a local brick and mortar store, especially a comic book store.
But if you don't have one,
go to Comixology and get the digital version. You get 20 extra pages of material for the same price.
I think it's only it's only like $10.
It's sometimes it's on sale for like $7 or $8.
Yeah, it's like it's hundreds of pages.
If that book was a regular graphic novel,
would be a $40
140-page book, it would be at least a $24.95.
Oh, at the very. I mean, with that many people involved, it would be a $40.
And I couldn't find it at a couple of the comic book shops in our area, so then I just went on Barnes and Noble and typed in store locator who has this book, and found one and bought it. So get it at Barnes and Noble.
Get it anywhere.
And if you buy the book in its hard form and you like it, like is the wrong word, and it moves you. If you live in an area that's not a big city with a big LGBT contingency, it would be great if you want to pay it forward, buy an extra copy, and donate it to your local library. Because I've heard from a number of children, a number of teens who live in places where that's not cool, where they can go read the book in the library. So,
and we've been a big library boosters on this show, and that's actually something, because people have been asking if we want their and a couple of people have actually sent us comic books, but no, please give your books to your local library. That is and you can mention us to the library, but what a great place.
Your local library, and also there's a website where you can donate comic books to the troops.
Operation Gratitude?
Which is a fantastic charity. But yeah, if you live in an area that's not New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, the big cities, giving a copy to your local library can actually save lives. I know that sounds profound, but a kid who was 16 in Kansas reached out to me and said, I now feel like I can graduate high school. So it's like, okay.
The book is that intense, by the way, and we do warn you, it is a very intense read.
Yeah, don't read it in public. You will ugly cry.
I know.
There is some ugly crying. It's a lot.
I was happy to be curled up at home reading it.
Oh God, yeah.
Imagine what I had to do for 6 months getting these every couple of days.
Oh my God.
I felt like I bit my lip in the same place metaphorically every day.
Yeah.
That was another thought I had reading it, was just knowing you, was going, how did you deal with this for 6 months?
Luckily,
Luckily,
the speed of the project.
You're not famous for being able to take a bunch of shit all the time.
There was no time to. I could appreciate the pieces, but just the accelerated rate of which we had to do this book, there was just no time. There was no time. It was in the old credits for the Incredible Hulk TV show. The mom flips the car because of adrenaline. This was flipping a car with adrenaline.
Yeah,
I didn't have time. I
could
look at the pieces and appreciate them, but I didn't have time to let the sadness get to me, because I had to do this for these people.
I was genuinely wondering how you got through the production of this book.
And also the unwavering support of the comics community. I mean, once again, I've said it so many times with DC and IDW, this book would not exist without them. I can't, from the highest level on down. the amount of people that just gave so generously of their time. It's thousands of hours there.
Are there any other questions about the book coming from the chat room, or
Has anybody said anything really awful?
No.
Chat
our
is so
viewers?
nice.
Okay, well,
It's
okay,
great.
good to know.
Jap and Rose asked,
viewers are adorable.
how did you decide on the wonderfully poignant title, Love is Love?
I was just wondering that.
I think it was Lin-Manuel Miranda who said that at the Tonys that year.
He did.
I think so.
right.
I think so.
And I don't know if he coined the phrase or not, but that's to me what I wanted the book to be about.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a bunch of people. Because the thing too that a lot of the genre comic viewers, let me put gay bars into a context you'll understand. Gay bars today aren't, and I don't mean that it's some kind of.
Oh no, I remember. I know where you're going.
But gay bars today are what comic conventions are to genre people. A gay bar, chances are, if you are married or if you are going to be married, that your fiance will have had her bridal shower at a gay bar. I have lots of straight friends who go watch sports at gay bars because they can watch the game and be out in the and not have to worry about it. Gay bars have become like Comic Cons in a sense where you can go there and be yourself and not be judged. So to have someone violate the sanctity of that, that's what also really hit home for me. It was like, wait a minute, this was a place where a bunch of people were just going to dance and have fun. There was no agenda. It wasn't a sex club. It was just gay bars have become social halls. As gay culture has become more assimilated and more accepted, they become a place where, you know, when I have straight friends who say, let's get a drink at a gay bar, I'm like, why? Like, because it's just easier. I'm like, oh, okay, I get that. And so that's what this was about too, the piercing of that sanctity, which is why I wanted, you know, there are 3 or 4 pieces in there by straight white guys who had tons of gay friends or met their wives at gay bars or would go there to be free and not be judged. So that's why that was important for me. And going back to the title about love being love, it doesn't matter. You know, love is love the same way that if you needed blood and the only person with the blood type available was Filipino, your body's not going to reject it because it's Filipino blood. We're all the same. We come up as a species with things to divide us when we're actually 99% the same, and we just let that 1% just get in the way of everything. And I've gotten to the point where now that I'm in my 40s, I say if I'm creating drama, I'm getting paid to create drama. I'm not going to do it in my own life because life throws that in its own way, and I think we just need to get out of our own way a lot of times and just be more accepting. So.
This actually segues a bit into our next topic. We want to devote, and this will be an interesting one because we wanted to talk a little bit about the history of LGBT representation in comics, on the page and behind the scenes, which of course is not a story of pure happiness all the time, but has some sort of lovely milestones. A lot of our viewers are sort of new to comics, so we're sort of also introducing some of our favorite characters and stories and concepts. And you all were kind enough to send a ton of your favorite... this is going to be our final segment. I want to leave a good chunk of time for this, because I put out the Twitter call for like what characters and creators do you want to celebrate, and I think I topped out at 75 answers? Something like that.
And they all said me.
Said Mark, yeah. It was...
You know how many screen names I had to come up with?
I like that.
Nice
Mark.
Twitter bots, by the way. They're very solid.
Your sock puppets
I use
are
the same one the White
very
House does.
impressive.
I was about to say,
it's
it's always a good choice.
So we will hit on some of those, and some of those will come in the end. But that was sort of what we wanted to focus on. If there are particular highlights people want to go, so.
Well, I remembered I was having this notion because I remember exactly where I was. I remember exactly where I was the week that the Alpha Flight issue that North Star came out in, which is one of the most ham-hocked, hand-fisted, like it's kind of embarrassing. Like
Right,
it's just
for those who don't know,
Oh, boy.
it's 1992. North Star is a member of the X-Men related title.
Canadian, yeah.
The
Alpha
X-Men
Flight.
related title
Alpha Flight.
Flight. I was going to say X-Men Offshoot, but that's not technically accurate. But they started the pages of X-Men. It's a whole thing.
You really don't need to know about Alpha Flight. Oh, that.
Alpha Flight's adorable.
Let me qualify this one here.
Okay.
Oh boy, there is some qualification. I'm going here for a reason.
When John Byrne started the Alpha Flight book, it was in the midst of the AIDS crisis, and he was going to write a story that North Star, who is a French Olympic skier who has a mutant power, kind of like the Flash, he was sick a lot, and he was going to do a thing with AIDS, and Marvel at the time said no. And then a couple of years later, after they had made North Star and his sister into elves from Asgard and all this crazy stuff, they went back, and Scott Lobdell wrote this story about North Star being gay. In retrospect, it is very ham-fisted.
It is very ham-fisted.
It comes from a place of sincerity.
Absolutely. As much ham does.
When you look at it, you have to look at it in context of the history of when it came out. Back then, back in up until the early 90s, we didn't have a reliable test for HIV or AIDS. Now HIV/AIDS is a chronic condition, a lot like diabetes in a lot of ways. When I was a kid, if I was 10 years older, I could be dead, because I have friends who are 10, 15 years older than me who went to literally hundreds of funerals in 3 years. I have a friend in New York who went to 750 funerals. Jeez. Everyone he knew died in the course of 3 years. So it's a little hokey, it's a little on the nose, it's a little gay equals AIDS, but you have to look at things in the history of you have to contextualize them and when they came out. So it was groundbreaking for that. It's important, it's historical important because of that. The story doesn't really hold up.
No.
The story's a bit dated.
But it made a difference.
But it did make a difference, because representation is everything. If you going to the Wonder Woman movie and seeing little girls, the Wonder Woman movie made me wish I had the Wonder Woman. Well, you are fired.
I have literally
I've seen it 7 times.
I have literally been too busy. It's just like the treat at the end of the rainbows to see this.
I'm gonna kidnap you.
Oh,
It'll be
please
good.
kidnap me.
But there's a whole generation of little girls who are going to grow up not knowing that there weren't movies like that ever.
Exactly.
And that representation, when it's done well, makes a huge difference.
So even back when this came out, and I was because I was in high school, and I was it was the year of high school where I thought, like, I should probably not continue my existence on Earth because everybody is awful. And it was high school. It was high school. I had one bad year and 3 pretty good years. You knew me through the pretty good years. I was watching this, and I was realizing, like, even at the time, just because I was really into the theory of writing and watching this, I started to figure out that, like, this was the beginning of a process, and I was starting to notice is like, this is going to lead to the type of characters I want to see in my fiction, and I started, like, breaking down this kind of formula of there's things that you have to do in this sort of the momentum of pop culture to, like, get the kind of characters you want, and this was one of the things is you have to do. And I broke it down to metaphorical representation with books like the X-Men, where there were almost no gay characters in the X-Men.
Or Peppermint Patty.
Or Peppermint.
Schroeder.
Those are then the Schrodinger's representations, which is aren't they? We're not going to say, but they are. Then we hit the heavy. We have the metaphorical. We have the Schrodinger. We have the stereotypes, which are these are the things people think they know about these people.
The gay hairdresser. The black drug dealer.
Then you have the buddyism, which is then you have the established characters going, some of my best friends, and then finally we're like, we can just have a character where this is part of the tapestry. Once we have gone through all of this stuff so that everybody has gotten it out of their system, we have kind of sifted the pop culture to the point where, like, now you can just do it.
That's not limited to LGBT.
No, it's for anything.
You look at female characters, you look at African American characters, you look at and what's interesting about the LGBT experience now is it's taken 100 years for black characters. It's taken 100 years for women characters. The LGBT representation in my life. If you told me 20 years ago that the Supreme Court would say that marriage is a right, I would have said no way.
No way.
If you had told me there was going to be a gay-straight alliance at my high school, where my graduating class was 1,000 people, 99% of them I'd say no. My high school reached out to me after the book came out to send copies to their library. The learning curve for LGBT, we have gotten the privilege of having a very accelerated learning curve on the backs of other minorities who are still struggling.
You got to live. You actually get to live to see the work pay off, which is
that's just
rare in human history.
As you said with that, that's just the way it starts. It starts out with exotic, then it becomes noble savage, then it becomes villain, then it becomes minstrel, then it becomes best friend, then it becomes lead. That's just the evolution.
Most of this is just me bragging that I was very proud that I came up with something like this around the age of 15.
It's pretty impressive.
These were your thoughts at the time?
This was more, it was like, because it was like the
Taliesin.
well, I was a very lonely child for quite a while, but I was just sort of watching this and, like, watching that North Star book. I mean, like, okay, I can already tell this is not going to age well, but does this mean we're actually going to get this stuff?
Well, yeah,
and
absolutely.
We did.
I mean, we absolutely did. I mean, you look at some of the material that's coming out now, and you know, I've been asked a number of times as I openly gay creator, have you ever had any homophobia or anything? I said, I've been working at DC now off and on for 20 years, and DC has been progressive before it was cool to be progressive. I've had, you know...
The year before North Star came out, Pied Piper came out, and they won the inaugural, I think, comic book GLAAD Award.
GLAAD Award, yeah.
For that.
And, you know, and I always say, I don't know what people say about me when I'm not in the room, but they don't know about what I say about them when they're not in the room either. So I've never experienced anything other than complete support from DC Comics and Archie doing their thing.
Oh.
You know, a shout out to Marvel. We didn't get to use Marvel characters in the book because that would have created all sorts of things. just legal and trademark things, but Marvel allowed a number of artists and writers who are exclusive to contribute to this book. Nice. Valiant did the same thing. So even though not all characters from all the big companies are represented, everyone who was asked did everything they could.
I'm trying to find the name of this character.
What's that?
I was trying to find. I started delving into trying to figure out where were the oldest transgender superhero I could find.
Well, Grant did stuff in Invisibles.
Well,
you could argue
before that, Doom Patrol.
Doom Patrol. Yeah, you could also argue that this isn't trans exactly, but the original Starhawk in the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
We've had that
he
conversation.
and his wife shared the same body, the same way Rick Jones and Captain Marvel
That
did.
falls under my
That's
metaphorical
interesting.
representation.
That's much more metaphorical, and because they were a married couple, it makes it a little bit left of center. But that's
You get a lot of attempts with interesting results. I want to shout out an article I particularly like, which at the time it was written in fall 2015, I think, was essentially the complete history of transgender characters in American comic books. It was over at Autostraddle, which is a lovely site. And the great thing about that article is that it is now no longer nearly complete because the last 2 years have sort of had as much good trans representation as the entire 100 years before. I think that's a hyperbole, but probably not by much.
Well, that's another thing we need to talk about too in the comics community. The comics community has a huge percentage of gay LGBT readers and contributors and writers and artists, because straight guys look at superheroes because they're big buff guys and they get they do the good thing, they win the superhero. Gay people look at them because there's also the idolization of the body. There's the figure, because the costumes are basically painted on them. It's almost like Da Vinci. And there's also the secret identity thing, which has huge resonance with gay people, because it's much that doesn't have the resonance now for a lot of the world that it did when I was a kid. But when I was a kid, it was like, oh, when I go out with my gay friends, I can be who I am. But when I go back, I have to be Clark Kent when I'm back in my background.
Yeah,
Well, a lot of any community that has sort of code switching will sort of immediately identify with certain superhero fiction.
It's what Brian Bendis is doing with Miles Morales is so spectacular. No pun intended, because it's a Spider-Man adjective.
That was terrible. That was a terrible.
But he did an issue where Miles' mask was torn, and a reporter took a picture and said, "He's a black guy." Wait a minute, Spider-Man can be black? Yes, Spider-Man can be black. So once again, it's very subtle stuff like that changes things. When you're not trying to get a message across, when you're not trying to be didactic, that's when the stuff resonates the most.
I have to tell a North Star follow-up story, because I was working at the shop the day North Star got married. Or I think it was the day that they announced.
We have that cover.
North Star's marriage on Astonishing X-Men 51, I think, circa 2012.
Oh my God! There we are.
Yeah.
Look at that.
And this was
all that gay.
This was one of my. It was a really delightful day, because when a new announcement like that breaks, like, people will come in and sort of comment on it all day at the shop, and you'll get different reactions. And there was at one point, like, a little, I think he was around 11 years old, one of our customers who read everything Marvel put out, and he came in, and I was so excited to talk to this kid, who I'm gonna call Billy, and. He came in, and I was just curious, like, I wasn't trying to be like, look, I'm delighted, but if you're not, that's sort of fine. It was a day like that, where I was like, if you're going to be happy with me, then great, and if not, let's just agree not to discuss it.
There's 2 other rooms in the store.
But what's great is, like, so Billy comes in, and I was just like, did you hear the news about, because he was picking up Astonishing, I think, and they had just announced that this was coming, I no longer remember exactly how this played out, but it was something about, like, oh, North Star proposed to his boyfriend, and the kid's face went just crushed. And I went, oh no, like, this 11-year-old, like, this sweet little kid.
If I was writing this, I want to know if I'm going to write the ending that I think we're getting.
So what happened was,
I'm going to whisper into his ears.
Okay. Put your guesses down.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
I was just crushed for a second, but I was trying to hide it, because I'm not going to be a jerk to an 11-year-old and be like, "You're being raised by monsters," But I was just like, "Oh yeah," and I was like, "Oh, what do you think of that?" And he was just like, "That's terrible. They just got back together."
It's actually better than I was thinking.
That North Star was rushing into this because
he's
he had
a speedster.
an on
Of
again,
course
off
he's gonna
again
rush
thing.
into it.
Yeah. Which as an adult, I can be like, yeah, no, he's the kind of guy who's just
I
gonna
thought
help me get
the kid was
married.
going to say, I wanted to marry North Star.
Oh, that's
that was
great.
what I
That
thought
would
I
have
was
been
gonna
better.
go too.
But this was the best possible outcome in that moment was he was worried
This
that
is
North
awesome.
Star
This
and
is
Kyle-
this is really
Rushing
better.
into it.
Almost,
That's even the gayer answer.
Yeah, it's way too
Girls,
soon.
slow down.
Yeah, he was just like, you guys have been off again, on again. I
Don't move
worried
in
about
yet.
This relationship.
You
Yeah.
aren't lesbians.
But it was so great because I was
I'm
like,
allowed to make that joke.
I have like 3 roommates who just like I'm gonna
don't.
get text messages from 3 roommates going, "That was about me, wasn't it?"
so it was amazing because I was like, for me, that's what this means is like, oh my god, I'm getting to see this. And for this kid, he's just like, yeah, well, maybe North Star will marry his boyfriend and maybe he won't. I hope he makes a good decision for him. And I love it was this like, we're not there yet where I'm not ready to stop making a big deal out of every time something cool happens. But that kid's the future.
What a wonderful
happy.
day when we no longer have to.
It's cool that you brought that up because at the MegaCon about a month ago in Orlando, we had an auction of a lot of the original art to raise money, and we raised $23,000. And Mike Perkins donated the page where North Star proposes to his boyfriend for the auction, and I so wanted to get it, but luckily the price went up that I couldn't afford it. But yeah, so thank you, Mike Perkins.
Do you remember? Do you happen to remember how much it sold for, or
It was
can you
it was
discuss?
the high 3 digits.
Jeez.
So
Wow.
that might not be a lot of money to a lot of people, but
yeah.
but I've lived on less for a year, so yeah.
I feel you.
The high 3 figures?
What? High 3 figures? Yeah, I'm a freelance writer.
Pencil piece, man. That's what you're gonna get. I know. I look at art online and I'm like, so like I can definitely like. I mean, like I'm thinking about this as the books that definitely like the X-Men is always the go-to. But they kind of have it easy.
For me,
Yeah.
also the comics. Another more groundbreaking moments for me as a reader were.
We got one right here.
Yeah.
But it was
I don't
actually
know- I don't know if it's in that
it was
one,
actually in Stormwatch where you found
Stormwatch.
out that Midnighter and the
That's-
Apollo.
I kept saying
We were having
planetary.
this
It's
conversation.
Stormwatch.
It was the last 2 issues of Stormwatch, I think, were drawn by Brian Hitch, and they were on Midnighter and Apollo on surveillance, and they had a little quickie.
So, The Authority, Midnighter, and Apollo. We're going to do one of our famous Wednesday Club write-ups. This is The Authority. It's a very fascinating book. I highly recommend you pick it up.
And DC is releasing the Warren Ellis Brian Hitch, a complete hardcover of it. It's going to be reasonably
That's being
priced.
purchased.
I've
And there have been a number of more recent Midnighter and Apollo series, which many of you shouted out when we asked what books you wanted to celebrate for
And the
Pride.
Ultimates wouldn't exist without this book.
No,
this
this
was
is-
a groundbreaking book. This is a book that set the stage, for better or for worse, of comics for 15 years after.
This was kind of a Justice League Avengers kind of superhero team that took larger questions of what these kind of superheroes would be like in the world and made grander, even bigger stories. It's a fascinating group of superheroes, but there are kind of placeholders for Superman and Batman in this group.
Well, in a
which
lot of
are-
ways, the Authority is kind of Watchmen 2.0.
Yes.
in a
Oh
lot
God,
of ways.
it's what a good way of putting it.
To break down that their
Hey.
characters are roughly analogous to some other existing superhero characters, or they examine all of the tropes in a new context. And 2 of these characters are.
I want to do a team that's just called either the Literals or the Archetypes.
I like the literals myself.
Just the Literals.
Can
I like the
literals fight
archetype.
The literals, we mean it.
Yes, the Literals. The Literals fight the Literalese, who actually mean the opposite of what that word means. Anyway, we
They're
diverted.
defeated by the metaphors. Yeah, it's so
who are
Apollo and
Midnighter and
Midnighter are Superman and Batman,
Yeah,
basically. But they're also a healthy gay relationship that's just existing in a comic book.
Yeah, that was what was great about what Warren did there. It was never, look, a special issue, they're gay. It was like, they're a couple. Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah,
which is how most people are. Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah, it's just a nice, healthy, easy thing that's part of the book and plays well into the book and the notion of it, and it's.
And because of the nature of comic book universes, things get joined and separate. And at present, Midnighter and Apollo, I believe, are both part of the regular DC universe.
Yeah, I think they might be.
are, but I think they're separated right now.
No, they're back together.
Are they back together?
I think
Okay.
they are a. And Steve Orlando did a great job on that miniseries because I never would have thought that Midnighter would be a bottom, but that's a whole other thing.
Oh wow!
He's verse. He's verse. Who knew? The Midnighter and Apollo in the DC universe now are different than the one. I guess in Wildstorm, the book that Warren is writing now, that's a separate Wildstorm universe.
That I
mean,
think is separate. But there's the Midnighter.
now
books
we're
that-
going down a rabbit hole of minutia that no one really cares
continuity.
about. So.
They've had a little bit of an explanation of how continuity in these things work, but like DC kind of has been using these characters in the main books, but these characters originally existed in a Image offshoot that was purchased by DC later.
Jim Lee's company, Wildstorm.
And so their best story, like the stories I really, really love so far, the most iconic ones are the ones that happened, especially under Warren Ellis there was a book, what was the first one? Was Stormwatch?
Yeah, Stormwatch was great.
Which gave way to the Authority, which was...
And you can read all this stuff. All the Warren Ellis Stormwatches are collected in 2 trade paperbacks, and the Authority stuff is collected as well, but DC, I think, announced they're going to be doing a big, like, Authority one of their like a $50 hardcover of all the stuff.
And this is and I find that a lot of the Wildstorm stuff, and there's a reason that we haven't talked a ton about it, and the reason that I haven't anyway.
One of those reasons is that I haven't read very much of old.
Is that they're comic books that are I find I get far more enjoyment out of them because I already have a lot of comic book knowledge. They're comic books that really reward you for knowing. They're not quite a remix, but they really give you a lot of love for figuring out or knowing things about comic books already, and they're very much commentaries on the existing comic books.
And because they were all creator-owned, actual real change could happen as opposed to the illusion of change. They could take the archetypes and flip them on their heads and do things you always wanted to see in a Batman or a Spider-Man or a Wonder Woman story, but you couldn't really do in a Batman or a Spider-Man or a Wonder Woman story because it's too far.
Well, you got to put the toys back in the box,
and it deviates too far from their mission statements. So in that sense, it was. In that sense, it was like a
well.
DJ
There's even a whole section where like Kirby is a villain. They actually have like Jack Kirby shows up as a villain, and there's a whole Authority story of him making his own superheroes to fight the Authority, and they've got like basically this cigar chomping, suspenders wearing angry guy whose job it is to just come up with superheroes that geneticists then make to attack like the Authority. It's great, but like knowing
was he named Jack Kirby?
No, but it was Jack Kirby.
No, he was working for the company, and they it wasn't he was the villain. He was creating these things for the company, and the company stole them from him and bastardized them and made them evil.
Yes, thank you.
Kirby wasn't the villain.
He wasn't the villain.
Kirby was Kirby.
Kirby was Kirby.
Yeah. Subtext is rapidly becoming text.
So, but knowing a little bit about that just makes these stories even more rewarding. Like, they're great on their own right, and they do stand up, but they're just, once, like, Planetary, again, is one of those, is from the Wildstorm universe, which is just a tour of pop culture.
Well, that was what was great. I keep circling back to the Wonder Woman movie because you haven't seen it.
No, go ahead.
Please just circle back in.
What's so great about the Wonder Woman movie is I say it's like fried chicken that cures cancer. It's delicious and it's good for you. It's I have not been this emotionally affected by a mainstream movie. I can't maybe since Back to the Future.
Wow.
It's the most I paid to see a movie in the theater since Back to the Future. I'll probably go see it again tonight. But in it, Wonder Woman, Patty Jenkins should just be allowed to direct everything.
Yeah, I'm on board.
And if you think she's talented, she's super fucking cool.
Oh!
I told her when I met her, I'm like, if we were friends in high school, we'd be smoking cigarettes out behind the cafeteria during lunch because she's just awesome. Her passion and her joy for what she does just shines through everything she makes. But what's great about the Wonder Woman movie is you don't need to know anything about Wonder Woman if you go see that movie. If you do know Wonder Woman, there are subtle nods for it. If you know the history of superhero film, there are 2 great homages to the Richard Donner Superman. And she does these homages in a way that are like, look how clever I am, they're just in there. In fact, I told people there are 2, and a bunch of friends were like, what's the other one? And when I told them the other one, they're like, oh my God.
Wait, so
what is the other one?
The revolving door.
Of course.
I would Wonder Woman, while talking about LGBT and acceptance, Wonder Woman has a character, Lucy Davis, Candy, who is a heavy woman. Never once is her weight mentioned. Never once is she the butt of a fat joke. And it's just, I mean, I get goosebumps every time I talk about this movie. I cry talking about this movie. This movie,
that's what's joyful in this movie.
This movie makes it look so easy. It's a movie where you realize, one, that Patty is a genius because she trusts silence. So many movies we've seen for the past 20 years are just an assault on the senses. The silences in this movie propel it. The subtlety of the movie propels it. It made you also remember we haven't had a superhero reveal in a movie since the first Batman movie with Michael Keaton. When she comes out the first time in her Wonder Woman costume, it's opera. It's the Superman theme by John Williams, and we don't do that in the movies. This leans in to the myth of this stuff. This leans into the heroicism of it, and it's just a movie that I'm so thrilled that it's doing so well because it proves that if you give people good things, they will respond to them. And every single person I know who's seen the movie has seen it more than once.
It's killing me that I've only seen it once. Like, I will see it again. I haven't had a chance.
I like to go see it and watch the audience watch it now because there are things in it where you get to see these little girls experiencing what I felt the first time I saw Superman when I was 8 years old in the theater. And we as white men we're used to the fact that it's always all about us. So we're seeing literally history be changed by this movie in the best sense of the word. I can't wait. I hope I live long enough to see all the 6-year-old girls in their 30s when they're running this shit.
Think about the stuff they're not going to put up with.
We'll have flying cars and healthcare. It'll be great. It'll be great because seeing these little girls is just we forget as artists, and this is getting into a little bit of pretense about how the stuff we create, where we just try and tell stories that entertain us, how that can affect and change people's lives. And we can't think about it too much because if we do,
go crazy, right?
you'd go crazy. You'd freeze because you wouldn't want that responsibility. But we're living in a world that even with all this awful, there are flowers growing through the remains of the rubble, which is nice to see. So if the planet's still alive in 20 years, I think we're going to it's going to be a really great place. And this Wonder Woman moment is an important moment in so many levels, cinematically, comic book wise, as far as female leads and all that stuff, because it's not a girl movie. It's not a comic book movie. No, it's a war movie. The same way Dark Knight was a crime movie.
It's all those things.
And culture is not a rocket ship. We all don't get on the rocket ship to planet culture and go up into the moon. Culture is like life. It is chaotic. It is violent. It is hungry. It is normal. The way it is not normal for everything to just keep getting better all at the same time. It's normal for everything to get better over a period of on the long game. In the internal point.
Well, love is love. Chaos. A tragedy made that book come to life.
Yeah, that is the soil in which these things get planted. Sadly, but
and that kid who graduates high school, who knows what happens?
We've got Black Market Bingo asking, what does pride mean to each of you individually?
Ooh.
Well, pride for me is a loaded word because as a writer, I think pride, I think hubris, I think pride can be a detriment. There's pride with a lowercase p and there's pride with a capital P. I think for me, pride in the LGBT sense of the word is lack of shame, is owning who you are and not apologizing for who you are.
Personal honesty.
And being a good person who is an honest person. If you are an honest person and you live your life by the only direction we need as people, treat people the way you want to be treated. I don't care if you're gay, straight, black, white, Republican, liberal, conservative, whatever. If you treat people the way you want to be treated, that is living pride because you should be proud of us, not yourself. You should be proud of the change you can affect to make the world a better place. And I know that sounds like fortune cookies or Oprah or Jan Love changed my life or something like that, but it is very true. So a lot of these cliches become cliche because they are very true. And I think if you just try and live your life honestly and be nice to people, hold the door, let someone in traffic, talk to the old lady in line at the grocery store. You never know what difference that's going to make. You never know how that's going to change the course of someone's life. So why not?
It's Harry Tuttle. If you remember the movie Brazil, Harry Tuttle, it was always was like a weird character that stuck with me. It was just that plumber who comes in like a ninja and fixes the plumbing and just goes, "We're all in this together, anytime," and then vanishes out. And I was like, "What a great!"
The one who gets it.
Was it Buttle? No, Harry Buttle.
It's the mix-up between Harry Tuttle and
Harry Tuttle.
Okay, wait.
Harry Tuttle and Harry Buttle. Harry Buttle's the one that gets
it. Okay.
This is an entirely different show.
Entirely different show. But no, the notion of we're all in this together, and I will say pride for me has always been about, and I got a lot of, well, for various reasons I got a lot of crap as a kid, but one of the things I got crap was this notion from some people, and this was the weird one, that I was somehow putting effort into being this kind of person that this took effort, that I was somehow pushing forward a pretense. And I just kind of had to do this is actually...
Who has the energy?
Who has the energy to pretend to be this weird and awkward? This is just me letting go. And if
I'm not Andy Kaufman. This is
this is not an act. This is just, occasionally it's curated, which is different, especially this being the internet, but just the notion that if we all are in the honesty that I was talking about, it's not honesty to other people necessarily, but that waking up that morning and just being the person you feel like being, and then just treating everybody the way and just finding that communication between real people, not people trying to live up to some notion of who they think they should be.
Once again, I'm going to circle this back to a quote Patty Jenkins said. She talked about how the word cheesy is banned on her sets because she said, when did we become afraid of genuine emotion and sincerity? And I'm guilty of this. We've all become too cool for school. We've all become the kids in Heathers and all that. And that's kind of why we're at where we're at now. We're afraid to cry. We're afraid to let down our walls. And I can't even read the quote because I start bawling. But she talks about we're in a really difficult place as a species right now. We should be embracing sincerity and genuine emotion and that sort of thing. We shouldn't be afraid of it anymore. And I just responded to her. I tweeted back, "Fuck yes."
This is I will say the design doc for this show was entitled "Fuck Irony," if I recall. Fuck irony, fuck cynicism. So
yeah, there was a great interview that she gave. I can't remember where it was, but like apparently like back in 2005, she was pitching on Wonder Woman and saying, I don't want to do like the deconstruction, dark and gritty. I want to do Superman. I want to do like like Christopher Reeve and Superman and
Another
genuine and sincere. And they were like, well, then you're not the right director for this because that's where we're going with it. And she was fighting for it for like 10 years now. So
who made the call? Who's the person who was like, yes, that's a good idea. I need to send you a fruit basket.
are they watching right now?
Yeah.
What does Pride mean to you? Since
This is an interesting
I'm
question.
kinda curious.
Pride, in terms of the month and the celebration,
Sure.
What you said, it's not Pride is sort of the sense of hubris that when I think of it, I think of Pride in response to centuries of being told to be ashamed. Mm-hmm. It's Pride is a response of like, that's not how we're gonna live anymore. We're gonna live in a different way, and we choose to make it real by believing in it and celebrating it. And occasionally throwing rocks at things back in the old days. And less with the rocks now. But
you don't have to like us, but we're here.
Yeah.
I don't need your approval to feel good about myself. And I think that should be for everyone. You know, I am who I am, and if you don't like it, that's your problem, not mine, as long as you're not being a dick.
Yeah.
You know, if you're awful, that's the whole other story. But if you're living your life honestly and someone doesn't like it, that's theirs. That's on them.
And if you have a problem with the way someone else chooses to be happy and they're not hurting anybody, that's a problem that you have.
It genuinely sounds exhausting.
And just
Genuinely
and just
sounds exhausting.
sad.
I have so much shit to do every day. Like, who has time for those feelings? My
exactly.
God.
Do we have time to go through more history?
We do.
Oh my God, we
We
have
do.
so much time to do
I wanted
more
to
of this.
take these
Okay,
were some
I-
of the important indies that go into this because some of the
Love and Rockets.
Love
and
and
Rockets.
Rockets,
Love and
of course,
Rockets.
Strangers in Paradise.
Strangers in Paradise. Fun Home.
Fun
Fun
Home and Dykes to
Home.
Watch Out For by Alison Bechtel. The
there was a-
cartoonist Alison Bechtel wrote a strip in newspapers from
Fun Home now a
1983 to...
Fun Home is now a musical.
Now a
And the
musical.
sequel, Are You My Mother, is even greater, I think, because it's about her relationship with her mom, and it's so good. It's so good.
They're both must-reads. You can get The Essential Dykes to Watch Out For, which was a weekly strip that she did in alternative newspapers for many, many years.
And it's collected. It's collected in a bunch of volumes. And there's one called The Essential Dykes to Watch Out For. There was a great strip that was in the back of the old Frontiers magazine, which was a gay national newspaper called Leonard and Larry. That was about a gay couple, two bear guys. That is out of print now, unfortunately. And I don't remember what happened to the creator, but it was really great because it was just a domestic comedy.
If you recognize the name Alison Bechtel from the Bechtel test, by the way, it's from an offhand joke in an early Dykes to Watch Out For strip. It's actually from just this, essentially, like, at the time, I think it was 4 panels.
And it's kind of funny that the Bechdel test is named after a lesbian, because how often do lesbians talk about the men in their lives? You know what I mean?
It's essentially one of the characters talking to her friend who's complaining that she's not going to see another movie unless it meets 3 conditions. And of course, many years later, with the advent of the internet and us all getting to talk to each other, we all went, that's a really good point. Let's share it and talk about it and discuss further. And she is one of my all-time favorite cartoonists. She goes through, you can get an education in a lot of modern social and political issues just by reading that strip because it carries on over the years.
Damn great cartoonist.
She's incredible.
Her style kind of reminds me of Lynn Johnson. It's very similar to the
Speaking
For Better or
of
For Worse.
Which also, historical notes.
Yeah, For Better or For Worse was a great strip. Like Gasoline Alley, an old strip, the characters aged in real time, and it was a family strip. And she was Judd Winnick's mentor, Lynn Johnson.
I did not know that.
Wow.
And she, Judd Winnick, who did my Pedro and Me, which is another amazing graphic novel.
A graphic novel about Pedro. Last name.
Pedro Zamora.
Yes, thank you.
Who was for a lot of the younger generation their first gay friend, who unfortunately died of AIDS very young, but changed the world by being an out gay character on The Real World back when it was actually still, it wasn't scripted reality, they were just kind of in this house. But Lynn Johnson had the oldest son in her strip, For Better or For Worse. His best friend came out to him.
Lawrence.
And it was such a controversy at the time, but it was handled with such grace and such elegance. And it was just amazing. And so that and IDW is going to be reprinting For Better or For Worse in big hardcover volumes chronologically starting this summer.
It's in the previews right now.
Such a great strip. And IDW is doing the best curating of our comics history right now, whether it's those artist edition that Scott Dunbier does or the Craig Yo stuff, which is the Library of American Comics, the old horror stuff. Support that stuff because our history is so important to see this stuff. and they've collected Bloom County. They're putting out a hardcover box of all the Bloom County stuff. Which if you wanted to see kind of a history of why politics are where they are now, read Bloom County. And they're all annotated. So if you didn't grow up in the '80s, they'll explain all the references to you.
Wait,
can't even.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh God, I still have like my vinyl copy of like the
with the Bill the Cat. Yeah,
Oh
I still have my
God.
Bill the Cat for President T-shirt.
Oh,
I now use it as like a wristband.
You are making me feel so old, man. Thank you so much.
Back when we were taking dinosaurs to work.
But no, I mean, like I've been talking this week to a lot of my LGBT friends who are much younger than I am about this show that we're doing today, and what a lot of them talked about was like the comic books that web comics was the big thing for the 20-something
busted
kids.
the doors open. Like
The 20-something
another
kids. I mean,
level.
like I had people compiling me lists of webcomics. I'm like, this is an insane amount. I'm going to put them up on Twitter at some point this week.
Nice.
But there was so much. I want to curate a little bit. But
Well, then we can leapfrog into the '90s and stuff, where you had, Phil Jimenez came out in the pages of Tempest. His first boyfriend was Neil Posner, who was a great writer, editor at DC, who died very young of AIDS. You had Alan Heinberg with the Young Avengers.
So we've talked about Billy and Teddy. We had a Young Avengers special a couple of weeks ago. I think that was circa 2005.
Yeah, you have what Brian K. Vaughan did in Runaways with both transgender and lesbian characters as well. When I did Manhunter for DC, not to toot my own horn.
no.
Do it.
But Manhunter,
Toot
Manhunter is
away.
basically about a lawyer a federal prosecutor in the DC universe in Los Angeles, and she prosecutes supervillain crime, which I kind of don't want to use the metaphor of celebrity crime here in LA, how if you're famous enough you get away with things. And I also wanted to do a book that was set in a real city in the DC universe. And I wanted her law partner. I said to Dan DiDio when he pitched me a female mentor, I said, we need to have some gay presence in the book. It's Los Angeles. I said, can I make her law partner gay? And I said, and I would love for him to have a boyfriend who was in the superhero community. I said, but I wanted to make one that fits. I don't want to just retrofit someone. I said, I want to find a character that it actually, much like Peppermint Patty or Marcy or Fred, and how did these work? And I went back and researched. One of my favorite books was Infinity Incorporated, which were the superhero kid. It was the equivalent of the Young Avengers. It was the Justice Society's Young Avengers. And there was a character named Obsidian who was the original Green Lantern's son. He had this power of darkness, sort of like Cloak from Cloak and Dagger. And I went back and read all that stuff, and he always had horrible relationships with women. They always ended horribly. He was never really good around them. And then in the Justice League books in the 90s, they kind of danced around the issue of him being gay and being in love with his best friend Nuklon. And I said to Dan, well, I'm not taking Roy Thomas's character and changing it completely. I said, this stuff is there. I can supply you pages where you would think that this was plotted. And DC's like, yep, go for it. So I got to have two gay guys in bed after having sex talking about what the food they were going to order, and then Green Lantern projects himself into the bedroom. And I told him, and what was great about it was there was no backlash. But I just told my mom, I'm like, can you call the 700 Club and pretend to be infuriated by this because I want to get the sales of the book up? But there was no backlash about that. And there's so much.
Obsidian was one of the picks that got tweeted at us for our Who Do You Want to Celebrate?
Oh, I love him as a character. I hope that.
Obsidian and Jade both.
I hope in
like,
Rebirth.
I
hope that
family.
stuff comes back into the DC universe because I have such a fetish for the JSA and the All-Star Squadron and all that stuff. I'm a
huge Stargirl fan.
I would kill to write that stuff. Those characters, I got to touch base on them a little when Manhunter was out. It's available in 5 trade paperbacks. They're all in print.
And where can they get them?
Amazon. It's still available through local comic book stores
And Comixology.
Yeah, I think they just finished the run on Comixology just this past year.
I got 2 of them right here.
But there's also there've been some other gay characters in the X-Men. There've been a bunch of those characters. What are they?
I don't know how to say Anole. Anole.
I've always said Anole. Yeah.
Like, this is the problem with
from the new X-Men run.
The X-Men found them, in my opinion, and please feel free to disagree. I always sort of found themselves in an interesting conundrum because their basic metaphor of the X-Men is this notion of intolerance, but intolerance for this made-up theory of the superpower being like the focus of the intolerance. I feel like they had a really hard time then layering real-world intolerance into it. And like one of the things that instantly broke for me, like the metaphor of the X-Men broke for me with this thing called the image inducer. Like Nightcrawler was such an important character for me because this is a guy who had to walk around being who he was all the time.
He couldn't escape who he was.
Until the writers gave him a reason that he could pretend to be normal.
And then he was Errol Flynn all the time.
Well, and then he was Errol Flynn all the time. And one of the things, and like the X-Men is steeped in sexuality. And it's like, it's a very, there's a sexual undertone to that book that it cannot be denied. But immediately I was like, well, once you are allowed to pretend that you're not something, then all we're really talking about is sexuality at that point. Like the minute you can hide like that, we're talking about sexuality. And I feel like they had such a hard time like just trying to like create a character who was a mutant and gay, because it's like, well, that's your life now.
I don't know if I would. I would argue that. I think that the image inducer was introduced, and by the time it was around for a very short period of time, and if I remember correctly, it's been a long time since I've read these. He said I feel bad using this.
They eventually dropped
he's like I don't
because he's not being himself.
Pride. I need to be proud of who I am. So I think that and it's also
they dropped it.
It's also easy to look back and judge this stuff in a way with 21st century eyes.
Absolutely.
Because Chris Claremont's a straight guy, so a lot of the stuff he was doing then was metaphorical, and even when he was trying, it came from a place of understanding and not judgment. So we also have to, once again, talking about that Alpha Flight issue, you have to make sure that these things are contextualized, which is why,
absolutely,
touching back on Bloom County, why there need to be annotated versions of some of this stuff, because the stuff might feel creaky or condescending now, but at the time period, it was huge, and there's something to be said for the hidden in the metaphor. You know, It's great that there's so much acceptance for LGBT characters and LGBT people today, but part of me wishes it was still back when I was in my 20s, when you'd see someone at a party and be like, yeah, I know. And it was just unsaid, or you would know that Peppermint Patty and Marcy are going to have a bed and breakfast in Oregon when they're adults.
Obviously.
And all that secret handshake stuff it's immeasurably better now. And I'm putting this but I would never want it to change. But there was something that the not knowing, the not having everyone be in on the joke, was nice, because it also gave us an ownership of ourselves, where it was the club we could control. We were the bouncer at the door of this club, and of course, ironically, homogenization is a good thing, and to an extent of everyone being mixed up. But there's something to be said about the subtlety of that, and I think a lot of times the subtlety in the metaphor is far more impactful than the direct.
I would hate for it to come across that I wasn't a fan.
No, you weren't at all. But I was sort of.
No, but it was. I think it was why there was a long time where we're not really going to put a gay character in the X-Men because we're kind of all gay.
Well, that wasn't the reason they did it. That was publishing. That
was
publishing stuff and commercial stuff and what was allowed at the time.
But
remember, Will and Grace was controversial when it premiered.
Yeah.
Sure, and at the same time, I've kind of wondered about Iceman for a long time. So.
Flash Thompson and Spider-Man. I want to write that.
Oh
story.
my God! Thank you.
I mean, even as a kid, I'm like, wow, he really loves Spider-Man.
Oh. Or look up Hannah Blumenreich's fan art for Spider-Man and Human Torch going on dates.
Oh.
It's really adorable. They sure do drive each other crazy, those two.
I was always the opinion Johnny might be bi. That was always my kind of kick in this.
So I
gotta say,
the metaphor of the X-Men in the 90s worked really well on me, because like I was being raised in a very conservative Christian household, and my parents were very loving and wonderful people, but like I was raised like homosexuality is a sin. So when I would read the X-Men and I knew what the metaphor was, and I would see how these heroes that I loved, especially Nightcrawler, how these guys were being treated by these other people, I was able at a young age to look at those other people and say, oh my God, I'm them. And I'm being mean to the X-Men when I'm mean to a person who's gay or anything like that.
Once again, art changes things.
Yeah, so like at a young age, like that got me to a place where in college, like I'm going to a private school. I went to a school called Southern Nazarene University in Oklahoma City.
Sounds very tolerant.
It was not, but the students actually were in a lot of ways, but the administration wasn't as much. But there were only like 2 gay clubs in Oklahoma City at the time, and I can remember always wanting to go to them, and like I would get like some of my girlfriends would be like, let's go to
let's see what they do,
like but it wasn't even that, it was like,
no, I'm not judging that.
Yeah, it was just like, this is so
that curiosity
cool. Like,
factor.
there is that curiosity, man. But like I can remember the first time going in and seeing like, the dudes in the leather and like all that. I was like, so the stereotypes are here, but those guys are just normal people. Like, and I remember challenging myself with that in college.
Well, that's why these safe spaces in college drive me crazy. Because college is, you're at an age where you want to challenge things, you want to know things, and the idea of safe spaces and colleges not being able to talk about certain things because we've taken a lot of that stuff these terms have gotten co-opted by, and they don't mean what they should mean in a lot of ways.
I was surprised that you were going this direction because essentially what you described earlier about the special meaning of gay bars and Comic-Cons is the central meaning of the
But
idea
they're open
of a
to
safe
everyone.
space.
But they're open to everyone. I think the term we live in a world now where words don't mean what their original definitions mean, whether it's literally or irony or Christian
literal,
things have taken on things. The term has become the opposite of what it really means. And I think that some things safe spaces should be. Well, everything should be a safe space, technically.
Yeah.
But
Nice.
but in a lot of ways, some of these terms have taken on an isolationist quality to them, which is counter to what the terms what they really mean and what they really mean to people. You know, if that makes sense.
By the way, this weirdly, can I bring it back to Wonder Woman again?
Sure.
A thing I love about the Wonder Woman movie is the way that it centrally captures, and the responses to it capture, this sort of duality in, like, being in a marginalized group or a culturally marginalized group, like, you sort of, you get a range of potential responses. And one of those responses is, like, let's try to make the world better for men and women. And one of those responses is women just being like, screw this, we're never going to fix it, let's just leave and do our own thing. And it's funny because that's never philosophically been the camp that I've been in, but I have a lot of sympathy for that sort of, like, sometimes you kind of think, like, oh, we're never going to fix it, let's just leave and have a community.
Let's buy some property.
What's great is that the movie kind of lets you have both feelings. Because Paradise Island's not a bad place. You can leave that movie and be like, I kind of want to move there. But you can also identify with Diana, like, and it matches my personal philosophy, which is like, no, take on the challenge, go out into the world, try to make it better, not because it's easy.
If you do nothing, how do you live with yourself?
Yeah.
That's ultimately the thing, and that's what I mean when I talk about and there are degrees, there are gray areas where when I talk about safe spaces being sort of a co-opted term, colleges are a place to challenge your beliefs. You know, I grew up, I didn't have any friends of color when I was a child until I went to college, and didn't know a lot of openly gay people until I was in college. And that needs to challenge your worldview. Maybe safe space isn't the right term, but you need to be challenged and pushed outside of your worldview.
It's important to encounter new ideas.
Because you don't have to like everybody. You know, life is a salad bar. You should try everything at the salad bar. You're not going to like everything, but at least try it once, just so you know, so you have a shared experience level with people. And that's what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely.
You shouldn't be afraid of everything. I'm not telling you to like everything. I don't care. You know, there are people I don't like. There are people who don't like me. That's fine. But we just don't. We don't interact. But we've met each other. You know what I mean?
And you have to be open to new ideas, and you have to have faith in your ideas. If you think that they're good ideas, that they're not. If they're good enough ideas, the world is not going to break them in half. Yeah. Like they don't need to be. They don't need to have a fence built around them. If you have good ideas and philosophies about the world's not going to break them. It's going to enforce them.
And debate isn't arguing.
No.
Yeah. I love getting into screaming debates with friends of mine about things, but then afterwards we're like friends.
Half of our relationship was screaming debates.
It's not, but it was about like the piping on Cyclops' costume. So really important stuff.
You were the worst. Thank you.
But we've come to a place where if someone doesn't like something you like, they don't like you. And that's not the case at all. There's once again, there's degrees of things. There are comic books, there are movies, there are novels, there's music I don't like. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean I think it's bad or badly done. Now, there are things that I think are badly done, but that's a whole different thing. And criticism isn't about the person. It isn't about the person behind it. It's about what the presentation is. And we've taken everything personally. Like, oh, you don't like that? Well, fuck you. Well, no. If I can meet you and say, why didn't you like this movie? Let's talk about it.
Oh, it's my favorite afternoon.
I'm not trying to change your mind, but you might say something to make me think of something, and I might say something and go, oh, okay. You know, and that's all. Be open to learn. That's what I think is the important.
Sure.
And there's a lot to learn.
Let's circle back through that because there's so much.
Let's go back to comic
here.
books. Now we're going to do social issues.
Well, because I want to talk about this forever, but I know that we won't ever get through this list, but I will spend the next 3 weeks being like, why didn't we say this?
This will be available on 13 CDs.
Yes, and we will get through absolutely everything.
Oh.
I see, and I can't do it. We talked about that too much. Like, it's such an interesting balance of like when you engage with those ideas and when they belong in certain discourses. Because I went to college in North Carolina, which means that the professors were sort of fighting this constant battle to sort of like educate us about broader principles while also confronting people who came in with a wide variety of viewpoints. And it was sort of like, you can't always, like, the effects of, like, campus speech and classroom speech specifically is an interesting and complicated issue for a reason. Because if kids come in, like, not every day can be about your classmates saying, well, I don't think gays should get married. And you're like, okay, well, that's not really relevant right now, and it does not help with our discussion, and it's making everybody else feel real shitty.
This is
Can
botany
we move on
class.
with
We
our
need to
thing?
move on.
But it's
The same people that
interesting-
say things like that are the same people that get mad when we take down statues from the Civil War.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
You guys lost. You lost.
No,
Anyway, that's all other.
I'm being good. We're back on topic.
Okay. Sorry. Good for you, New Orleans and Louisiana.
Yeah,
Good for you.
heck
About
yeah.
goddamn time.
Speaking of moving into the damn future and welcoming people into it, Batwoman.
Oh my God.
That was kind of a big one.
Yeah, absolutely.
2006, I think. Because there's different approaches. When you're looking at a body of comics characters who've mostly existed for like 50 to 70 years, you have a couple different options. One is, and I love the way you described this, to look for people in the existing mythology who can, without real friction, be reinterpreted or revealed or added to, like you did with Obsidian. Another one is to just make up somebody new, basically.
And it's we gotta put this into context. DC Comics let their number one franchise, maybe even Warner Brothers, after Harry Potter, the number one profit engine for Warner Brothers, a huge corporation, allowed an openly gay character in the Bat universe.
A gay Jewish woman!
A gay Jewish woman named Batwoman.
Yeah.
Not some other character who lives in Gotham City, and she's Bruce Wayne's cousin. That shows, once again, how we went from 0 to 60. This was less than 20 years after that North Star book.
Yeah.
That's a big effing
amazing.
deal. That's a big deal. And once again, what Greg and J.H. Williams did with the creation of her, and I was lucky enough to get to write a run with her, and I would love to write her again. She's such a fascinating character.
I'm going to throw some of your
Throw her up there.
Read the stuff by Greg and J.H. That's the really, really great stuff.
Read it all.
Start with it, at least.
Read
Well,
it all.
there are 2 trades of mine, but you can read their stuff. But they really, I was just aping on the song. I was just, what is it called?
Improvising
on a song that they started writing. They wrote her as a character who was definitely queer, definitely female, but wasn't queer or female at the same time. Because I always say that being gay is a huge part of who I am, but it's also an utterly insignificant part of who I am. We're all have the same day-to-day struggles. And what they did with that was so fascinating because they took stuff and ran with it in a way that had never been done before, in a way that was, once again, it wasn't, she was outed in the military during the days of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but it was never about that. It was never that.
That was about getting her to where she needed to be.
She was a damaged character who wanted to do well, who happened to be gay. And that's always the thing. If the adjective is first, put the adjective, that's a facet. Not
So we have Compel Bast asking, wait, Batwoman is Bruce Wayne's cousin?
Yep.
Yep. So read issue 25 of Batwoman, my first issue. Is it? And I didn't say it because, but she's Bruce Wayne's cousin, yeah.
There we are.
Kate Kane.
And I'll say J.H. Williams.
On his mother's side.
J.H. Williams is the third is one of those artists that
Just extraordinary.
If he existed in the Renaissance,
if I could own
his art would be in castles. And
every
church
bloody
ceilings.
page he had. Like I scour to get art from him.
His stuff. He is a genius, and he and his wife are 2 of the sweetest, most awesome people in the world. It's always I'm always kind of thrilled and kind of annoyed when I meet people who are super talented and nice because I'm like, I feel like a crappy person.
Possibly one of my favorite.
But Jim is
one of my favorite
talented.
comic book artists.
He's an amazing.
Does things with
talent.
panel design that are the flourishes with the panel design.
And once again,
designer.
watching him draw, I feel like Salieri at the end of Amadeus. He's just doing this stuff, and I'm like, wait, I can't keep up. How do you do this? It's just genius. He's just born with this. I mean, that doesn't mean he didn't have training, but he's definitely, this is like this talent that just spills from it. Look at, he's never getting a piece of artwork that was false.
It is almost Renaissance. Like the things that he turned, and there are issues of Promethea that I flipped through where I'm like,
you can just look at his stuff and get lost in
this?
it. Yeah, it's amazing.
There was one issue of Promethea, just to harp on him again, that he did, which was an Ouroboros piece of art. The entire book could be lined up page to page, and it was one single piece of art, and then the last page connected to the first page.
The last issue was a 36-page
I bought 4 of them and tiled my room with this issue.
That's wonderful.
And
we're
forgetting the trans issue of Promethea, talking about trans characters.
Yes!
Promethea was Alan Moore's take on the Wonder Woman female heroic myth and epic.
Which, for the record, if you liked Wonder Woman in World War I, check out Promethea.
Oh my God, check out Promethea.
Promethea. There are 5 volumes that are all in print of the series, and Promethea manifested herself sort of like in different human.
She's a concept.
And
She's
she's
sort
a
of
concept,
inspiring.
and she was the avatar for a lot of humans. And they did an issue that was set in the 40s, I believe, about this private eye who was in love with
God, it was
Promethea.
so
and Promethea, when
heartbreaking.
she wasn't Promethea, the superheroine or the goddess, was a gay man who was a cartoonist. And it ends very tragically, but that was a
Very
groundbreaking story
tragically.
as well. But yeah, Promethea
one of my favorite books.
is one of those things that it reads like a novel. It is a dense read, and what's great about Alan's stuff, even when it's super complicated, is he trusts you enough that you can keep up.
Yeah.
It's so nice to be treated like an adult with a brain in entertainment, because so much entertainment makes us sit back. I like stuff that makes me lean in and challenges me. And once again, it's J.H. Williams, where he really
doing what he does
came
best.
into his own for the first
No,
time.
that was the book
that
where I was
allowed
like,
him to
who
experiment.
who is this
And
guy?
those I can't recommend. If you like Wonder Woman, this is Wonder Woman adjacent and plays with
I'd
a lot.
forgotten about that particular story. That's
and
it's
Jose Villarrubia did the
so tragic.
there's photos
The
in it.
photorealistic stuff in there is amazing.
So
and it's
that's
such a
one
tragic
thing that
story.
does haunt sort of the early history, and it makes a lot of these stories stand out, but is also a thing that I like celebrating the modern additions to, is that like a lot of stories, especially if you're telling a historical story about a gay or lesbian or transgender person, there tends to be a lot of tragedy.
Well, there's also the dead gay trope, but there was also some really offensive ones done. And I know this is a positive, but
They aren't all winners.
But there's one in particular that Marvel did in the Rampaging Hulk magazine, where Bruce Banner was staying at the Y,
Ooh,
and
haven't read this.
there were these gays that were going to attack him in the shower, and it was all these mincing stereotypes. And I remember even as like a 10-year-old reading that, and going, "Come on, Jim Shooter, you're better than."
Well, I mean, even the
he
Incredible
though?
Hulk television series, that was the whole Robert thing, which is such a.
Oh, yeah, they couldn't call him Bruce.
They wouldn't call Bruce Banner Bruce
Bruce
Banner.
was a gay name.
Because Bruce was a gay name.
What?
Which is why,
What?
That's why it was
What?
Robert
why it's
Bruce Banner
Robert,
in the
Robert
TV
Banner
show.
in the
How
TV
was
show.
Bruce a gay name?
I don't know how to
Did
explain
anybody
this to you.
consult Bruce Lee on the
Or Bruce
heterosexuality
Wayne?
of his name? Yeah.
Or
Like-
Robert the Bruce,
Yeah.
No.
What? That's crazy.
or Bruce Springsteen.
It's one of those things that you just sort of stare
I know
at
the
and
name
you're
was
like,
different, but I didn't know why.
Well, this
Yeah,
is it was
I mean,
TV.
it was
we
70s
we
and
couldn't show
before.
Lucy and Ricky in bed together. I don't know how she got pregnant. So I mean, these things aren't unique to the LGBT experience. They're just things that happen as culture becomes more open.
But it's also one of the things that makes it especially fun to celebrate sort of modern examples where it's not always tragic. So, like, Batgirl had a supporting character introduced in fall of 2011 named Alicia Yeoh, who I think was one of the first prominent transgender cast members in a superhero book.
Yeah, probably in a mainstream superhero book. Yeah.
I believe maybe the first. She got married this past fall.
I was going to say, was Kane dating the head of Checkmate for a while too? I'm trying to remember. Like, she had a really fascinatingly spotty dating history.
Moondragon and
Phyla-Vell.
Quasar, the
Phyla-Vell.
Yeah, the original Captain Marvel, his daughter were a
Couple
lesbian
for a while.
couple.
Phyla-Vell. Phyla-Vell fought death for Moondragon with Drax, because Drax was like, "That's my daughter," and she's like, "That's my girlfriend," and they went and saved her from the Moondragon who was keeping her. She made a deal with Oblivion to save her girlfriend.
Love
You
is love.
are adorable sometimes. Hi.
Oh, she.
Phyla-
I will say something. I will say about Promethea, just as sort of a warning for it is also the last book that I remember using gay as a slur, especially in the first few issues. There are a couple characters who kind of do the "that's so gay,"
But it's the character.
but they're going
in
there.
the voices
Yeah,
of
just so
their
you know,
once
like
again, it's
and
not
it's an
that-
intentional choice. So when you go
Yes.
there and you go,
Oh,
like they're going.
And
somewhere.
one other book that I
Bring
can't
it.
see, and this is quite possibly my favorite book Vertigo ever published. It was by Peter Milligan and Duncan Fegredo. It's a book called Enigma.
Yes. Oh.
Enigma was such a great book.
So good.
It's finally back in print, the trade paperback. It is so great, and there's if you're listening and you want to buy Enigma, I'm going to do a spoiler alert because this is
We are the spoiler
This
alert
is
show.
very important to when the book was
Stop
being
trying to make that a
published.
thing. That's not a thing.
Enigma is about this guy who read these superhero comics when he was a kid, and these superheroes and the villains are coming to life in the real world. And he tries to track down the guy who created them, and the guy who created them is sort of this washed-up, sort of hippie guy, and he's gay. And in one issue, I think it's issue 3, the guy hits on our antagonist, or our protagonist. And Enigma's the main superhero of it, who has this link to this kid. And the creator hits on him. And the guy, the lead character, punches him in the face. And that's where the issue ends. And I remember reading it going, oh, God damn it. Really, we're not all predatory. And why would he react that way? It was like the book was late on schedule because the art is brilliant and probably took a long time to do. But the book was delayed for a while. And then when the next issue came out, you find out that our lead is gay, and he couldn't deal with it. And that delay made the slow burn and the disappointment going, oh, I love this book so much, but is this going to ruin? Is this going to ruin everything? And it made perfect sense because he was so not dealing with who he was. And in the end, he and Enigma, the superhero that was a huge part of his childhood, become lovers. And it was done in a way that is so fucking ahead of its time and so brilliant. And this book does not get enough credit for
Is it in print?
Peter Milligan and the great Duncan Figurato. Peter Milligan, who also did LGBT characters in Ecstatics, and who was also Shade the Changing Man, who was also but Peter Milligan,
Shade, an amazing book.
Peter and Duncan, both straight white men, did this book that is so smart and so intuitive and so brilliantly paced. It is one of my Desert Island comic books. It is in print. Go get the trade. I think it's available on Comixology. You will not regret it. It is. You can just the art once again. The art.
It's spectacular.
Duncan is like Jay's brilliant.
It is a spectacular, beautifully painted book.
Duncan was actually the storyboard artist for The Force Awakens.
Nice.
So that's the scope of this guy's talent. But Enigma is one of the top 10 LGBT.
It's an amazing book.
Ever. And it's a great comic besides that.
Years. I haven't thought about it in years.
So one other thing that I love that is now a thing in comics that I did not see coming is good LGBT representation in children's books.
Kevin Keller,
Archie Comics 2012.
Once again,
somehow the world did not burn down, and he has stuck around, and we didn't see it coming, but he's in the damn TV show.
I love that the Archie, the company, said when the million moms, who are like 3 moms in Tulsa, and they're probably 3 men in Tulsa, said, whoa, that's going to rot the children's brains. And Archie's like, relax. And I love that they try and Betty and Veronica try and get Kevin set up. They did a thing later in that Life with Archie book that was Archie in the future, where Kevin ran for office, and his boyfriend was a wounded vet from the Gulf War. And the thing about Archie that's great is Archie comics are all about acceptance. Yeah. Because they're not about acceptance. It's just all these characters just all get along. Even Betty and Veronica, who are kind of enemies, they have a begrudging respect for each other. And if Archie wasn't in the picture, they'd probably be friends. But they will never admit that. Yeah. So Archie has always been a great read, even as an adult, because it's just so, it's not Pollyanna-ish. It's got its tropes, but there's always it just feels like what kids should be. And the fact that Archie, known for this sort of safe sort of storytelling, did this, and the world didn't end, he became one of their most popular characters, is once again, I feel sometimes like I'm listening to FDR's fireside chats compared to today, because it feels like the world has gotten so accelerated. But yeah, and once again, you can't overstate the importance of.
I love the piece that Roberto did with Archie for Love Is Love.
Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa, who is the chief creative officer of Archie Comics, and he is the creator
fascinating guy,
really, and a lovely guy. One of my dearest friends, just a genius guy. He's written a bunch of. He rewrote the Spider-Man musical. He wrote a musical for American Psycho that was fantastic.
He was the one who originally wrote a piece of theater like the Archie play that got had to have all the names.
If you haven't watched our Archie episode,
we have a whole Archie episode.
Archie meets Leopold and Love. It was great. Archie's Scary Mysteries, or Archie's something.
Well, and he's responsible for the Riverdale show right now, which I finally sat down and watched, and I'm irritated how much I like it.
It's really good.
I really like it.
It's really good.
Oh, it's like everything. It's like all it's got.
Everything that shouldn't work works.
Veronica's amazing.
And if you're a youngster, well, on your fancy iBook thingy, if you like Riverdale, go to the next restaurant called Twin Peaks.
Yeah, no, it's got a lot of Twin Peaks.
It is a great primer to go to Twin Peaks in the sense of it.
Do you mean like going back to the beginning, watching the old school? The old school Twin Peaks, not starting now.
No.
Not the new.
No, the new Twin Peaks is brilliant, but it's so inside baseball. If you haven't
watched the original, you'll be so lost.
Riverdale is Twin Peaks with Archie. It is absolutely old school Twin Peaks,
and a little less pretense.
It's
also Riverdale. It's also Archie meets Twin Peaks meets Douglas Sirk, who was a big 1950s film director who did all these plateaus and tableaus and things that Douglas Sirk did. A lot of Rock Hudson and Jane Wyman movies, Written on the Wind, all that have
car by the river having a picnic. Yeah,
Todd Haynes, the movie he did with escaping me now. The movie he did with Julianne Moore.
Oh God.
Something in Heaven. Something in Heaven.
Far from Heaven.
Far from Heaven. Far from Heaven. Yes, that is a Douglas Sirk movie that plays with this the underside, the underbelly of of suburbia, and also
Yeah.
like Blue Velvet's another good thing. But if you like Archie, Blue Velvet, Far From Heaven, Douglas Sirk,
those notes of small
Twin
town and
Peaks.
repression and Glorious Americana somehow all.
God, Riverdale's good.
Yeah, Riverdale's really
Alright.
good.
Yeah.
But
We have so
I
much
love
to get through.
So much.
I love the piece in Love Is Love because it was like, we can do it. Of course we can do it. Let's go do it. We're gonna go do it. And I was like, oh God, I love Archie so much.
Yeah.
Like, it's
but
so...
their earnestness is positive. It's not you're not looking down at these characters. You're looking at what youth is supposed to be. Why not? But why?
Yeah.
No.
Why-
I'm sorry. Not why, but why not? Let's just do this.
Let's
And
just
that sort
do
of
it.
energy
We'll go
is
play it.
so-
We'll play a concert. Yeah, the Archies will
It'll
play
be great.
too. It'll be great. Yeah.
We've got an idea for the beach renovation. Like it's good stuff. So we also get things, and Shannon Waters. This is the key in having great creatives who bring their own experiences to things, and like for better or for worse, their own agendas, and usually for better. Can have a huge effect. So editor Shannon Waters is over at Boom, and she has got a line of books under the label Boombox, which have been rocking my world for the last 5 years, basically. And one of those books that she is one of the co-creators of is Lumberjanes. Lumberjanes, I think, won one of the GLAAD Awards in the recent year. They not only have... Lumberjanes is an all-ages book about girls at scout camp fighting monsters. And it is charming, and it stands completely alone as an entertaining narrative with beautiful art. And it also has 2 of the 5 characters who have a very gentle romance, like appropriate to 13 and 14-year-olds kind of having a crush at camp, exactly like you do in real life romance. And a character who you find out in the second year of Lumberjanes is a trans girl. And it's just part of the narrative of these books. And I'm so proud that they're out there in the world. These books, along with IDW, has Gem and the Holograms, which has trans representation, I think, and some LGBT characters.
one of the creators is a trans creator who...
Sophie Campbell.
Wet Moon, her book from Oni is collected in, I believe, 4 nice little books.
And they've reissued them in very nice new editions.
Beautiful stuff.
There are, I'm just going to veer now, but there's a webcomic creator named Julia, I think, Kay, who does a comic called Up and Out, that is one of my absolute current favorites. But Lumberjanes and Kevin Keller, Help Us Great Warrior has a trans character in it. That's also a Boombox book.
Isn't there a gay character in the Steven universe?
I think there's like a ton of them.
Okay.
I really
those cartoons are definitely...
And they have a non-binary creator working on the comics, I think. That's so non-binary representation has sort of not come very far yet, but we're kind of getting there. Asexual representation in Jughead.
In Chip Zdarsky's Jughead, he has Jughead as
We're
an
always
asexual
arriving at the
character.
same point, and I love it.
I love, and that Jughead book is such a great read. It's a lot of fun.
It's a really fun book.
We had some other requests to shout out. I do remember that, like, certain examples for a variety of categories. We talked about some trans women in comics, not as many trans men, although Koi Boy from the cast of Squirrel Girl is a trans man.
Trans man is female to male.
Essentially someone who was previously assigned female who identifies as male.
Well, there's a great piece in Love Is Love that 2 of my friends, Mary Jo and Chick, when they met, they were straight women. They fell in love, and they're like, "Oh, I guess we're lesbians now. Cool." And it's a great piece. It's a 9-panel piece in there. And then Chick realized that he was trans, and so they went from being straight women who fell in love to becoming a lesbian couple to now being a straight couple again. And it's like, and what's great about it is Mary Jo, who's like, was like, and Chick was like, I guess that's just what this is. We love each other.
Yep.
We love each other.
Love is love.
It doesn't matter what the wallpaper in the house looks like. I like the house, and it's just, I reached out to them specifically because both of them are brilliant comedians. And if you follow me on Facebook, that Joker picture of me, Chick is a great photographer and did this. He's sort of like the nerdy Annie Leibovitz.
That's amazing.
But having that piece in there, So I don't know a lot of male to female, a lot of female to male trans people in comics, though.
No, it's
trans men.
Thin at the moment.
Shout us out if you know
Please.
some good male trans creators.
Or characters.
I know that in the commentary community, and I don't know how much attention they'd want brought to it, but Jay Edidin, who contributed to
Who's awesome. I love Jay. He's great.
A trans man.
Yeah.
I believe. I'm trying not to make declarations about other people's identities, but to the best of my knowledge.
That Miles and Jay talking about the X-Men is such a great podcast.
It's so good. My only problem with that podcast is that I always want to put it down, go reread everything, and then pick it back up.
Yeah.
What is
it's
the
Miles
and Jay explain the
X-Men.
Because someone has to.
Oh my
It's
God,
actually
I've never heard of this.
It's an amazing podcast.
It's so good.
There's something about the X-Men that just inspire a lot of really interesting commentary podcasts that I always really enjoy. I don't know why. It's weird.
Well, a whole generation of us got into comics for it.
There's a bunch of
It'd be
also
weird if we didn't have a bunch of responses.
There's also a bunch of Japanese comic books weirdly enough to do with this because
there's one I want to talk about.
Yeah, no, dude.
There's a Japanese artist named Tagami who's known for his very explicit gay male comics in Japan, and he has an all ages graphic novel series that just came out called My Brother's Husband, and it should win everything. It is an all ages book.
I have it at home, but I haven't read it yet.
You'll read it in one sitting. It's very Japanese. It's and I don't read a lot of manga because the reading backwards thing I haven't done that for my whole life, so it's very difficult for me. I read this in one sitting. It's about a divorcee in Japan who has a 10-year-old daughter, and he had an identical twin brother who was gay, who moved in Canada, married a man, and then died. His widower comes to Japan for the first time to meet the family, and that's all I want to say. It is so simple and so pure. And I've given out probably 10 copies of it as gifts already to people that have gay family members and don't know how to talk to their kids about it. It is so good. I want the second volume now. My Brother's Husband, it's out in hardcover. It's going to be on all the awards lists next year because it is amazing.
No wonder we can't order any more right now with the shop. Publishers, get at us.
I'll also say out of Japan, like older books, The Rose of Versailles deals a lot with gender issues. Utena.
Defining moment for a lot of girls my age was the Sailor Moon Extended Universe when we found out what was being cut out of the American releases of Sailor Moon.
Uranus and Neptune.
They turned the gay couple into cousins. Later on, they kind of couldn't fight.
They made
the
that like the current versions. They're definitely like, no, we're not doing that anymore.
It was merely in the '90s initial releases, but it was great. Like a whole generation of us went on the internet and found out, and we're like, "What? Yeah, okay, yes."
So many things make sense now.
But
they're far less creepy now.
Far less weird.
Yeah, they were really fond cousins.
Yeah, Rose of Versailles, I'll definitely say is one. There's also I'm trying to remember. There's a Tezuka book. I want to say it's Princess Knight, which is a very good one in that direction. Japan has always had a very, very interesting relationship with gender and gender identity. And
different sets of problems.
But because of that, you get to see books where they don't have our problems; they have entirely different
problems. Well, then you would definitely like My Brother's Husband, because if you know a lot about Japanese culture, you can see the cultural things there that are really fascinating. There's a great scene, minor spoiler alert, where the little girl who's obsessed with her new uncle, and he's like a big berry guy, and she sees him with his shirt off. She's like, "You're so furry, it's so soft," and the father's like, "You can't do that. You can't touch. You can't hug." And she says, "If you were married to my uncle, who's the man and who's the woman?" And he explains it to her. And then a couple scenes later, her father is in bed thinking, "God, I feel guilty because I thought the same thing, but I was afraid to ask that question." And it plays with perception in a way that's not, you're wrong for thinking this. It's such a good book. I imagine that a lot of child psychologists will be giving this book out because it's so pure the way it handles it, and the way this guy writes this child. It's like Stephen King writing children. This little girl is so real and so unfiltered, and for warts and all, it's a great book that happens to be about LGBT issues, and it's just spectacular stuff. There's one other person I can't believe we forgot to talk about so far, Sina Grace.
Yes.
Openly gay creator who is writing an openly gay character for Marvel Comics.
Pick up Iceman.
And pick up Cena's autobiographical work. His stuff is just great. Not My Bag is his first graphic novel about his life. His new one is fantastic. It's all about, he had some health issues last year, and all dealing with health and mortality and being gay and where do you fit into the world of art and creators and just kind of warts and all stuff. I have immense respect for creators that can do autobiographical stuff that doesn't make them look like they're heroes or villains. It just shows them as human beings and all their flaws, and that stuff is so unflinchingly raw that it's just fantastic stuff. And
of course, America Chavez has her own book right now over at Marvel, being written by Gabby Rivera, who I think may be a queer creator, but I need to check my math on that one.
And there's isn't Silk also a gay character at the Marvel universe? There's a gay couple in Silk, the Spider-Man spin-off.
I think there's some of her close friends.
A lesbian couple.
Like her.
So we've got 15 minutes
We've
left.
got 15 minutes and like 75 amazing suggestions. Some of these we will have gotten to. I'm just going to say the words Renee Montoya out loud because I'll hate myself forever if I don't do
Montoya.
that. Read Gotham Central.
Available in 4 trade paperbacks in print.
Yep.
One of the like when Gotham the TV show got announced, and I was like, why are they not making Gotham Central? We were all like, that's the show I want to watch.
That was what I wanted to watch.
Renee Montoya is an amazing queer character in the DC universe and has been there for ages and is.
So is Maggie Sawyer. John Byrne made her gay.
Supergirl, yes.
And Superman, he made her gay, and it was once again he had to couch it very subtly, but she was a divorcee and was in a custody battle with her kid, and it was very subtly played that she was a lesbian. And before, I believe Greg and Ed made Renee a lesbian. I don't think she was a lesbian in the animated series before.
They didn't really.
They never dealt with it. I don't know.
It was never implied.
But
one way or the
Maggie
other.
Sawyer might be the first openly gay character to appear in a cartoon, because she was gay in the comic book before she appeared in,
This is a great question.
Superman the animated
true.
series. I'm not sure about that. Fact check the internet, but I think that might be the case.
We have a few viewers who will already know this.
Yeah, who
always.
will be typing in a second. All right. Elijah David at Defective14 says, Wednesday Club, got to give a shout out to my boy Jughead from Archie. Asexuals do not get enough coverage, I feel.
I loved that one because two other people kept chiming in where they were like seconded, thirded, and someone went fourth. Now we have enough for bridge.
Oh my God!
You all are adorable and we love you.
so adorable.
Ricky Galletti at Ricky's a Geek says, cracks knuckles and types enthusiastically. DC Comics, Poison Ivy, Batwoman, Midnighter and Apollo, Maggie Sawyer, Renee Montoya, Marvel, Iceman.
We have to call out that Marguerite Bennett is taking the DC bombshells and remaking the DC universe in her own beautiful image with this wonderful vision of an alternate World War II DC universe. Which makes explicit certain queer-coded relationships like Harley and Ivy and it introduces others and has just been fantastic.
And the new book that's being relaunched is going to be dealing with the internment camps of Japanese American citizens.
Woo!
Oof.
Serious business.
And if you don't remember it, you're gonna be doomed to live it over and over again. Good for her.
So still Ricky Galletti says, Marvel, Iceman, Angela and Sarah, Wicked and Hulkling, Phyla-Vella, Moondragon, America Chavez, Carolina Dean,
Flash Thompson,
Teddy from the Infinite Loop, IDW, Daisy Wooten from Giant Days.
I love Giant Days. Again, Boombox.
All but Hawkeye of the Young Avengers.
Sarah's a trans woman. That's also Marguerite. I was like, there's a reason I wanted,
Boom. Lisa and Allie from Sunstone at Image and Talk.
The opposite of the all ages thing.
Yeah, I was going to say Sunstone.
Sunstone
was going to be one of my. When we do our little round, I'm going to do Sunstone. Okay.
Man, Galletti went nuts. Lord Blackheart, Sir Ambrosius, Golden Lion from Nimona, Harper
Golden
Teen.
Loin. Your typo was hilarious there because his name is Golden Loin.
Kim and Kim from Kim and Kim Black Mask.
By Magdalene Visaggio, who is a creator to watch. Kim and Kim is Eisner nominated this year, but Magdalene Visaggio is a trans woman and a totally kick-ass writer, and I'm very excited to watch her.
Then Ricky wrote, creators, Magdalene Visaggio, Erica Moan, Kate Leth, Phil Jimenez, Noelle Stevenson, Kylie Summer Wu, and Katie O'Neill.
There's
Kate
so
Leth's
many
run on
more.
Hellcat introduced
And
a
so many
wonderful bisexual male character with a storyline that was all about sort of people in his life. Like, somehow the book was completely fun and lighthearted and a superhero story, but managed to work so much real world and story in around it without losing any of its charm. I don't know how you did that, Kate. But you're real good, and everyone should read your Patsy Walker Hellcat with Brittany Williams.
Jim Blackheart says, I would like to give thanks to Parent Daniel for the creation of Kevin Keller and all his amazing work with Archie. Let's see. TBQ says, Wonder Woman is bi. Be nice to get a shout out for that.
Canon bi.
Let's see. We've already talked about.
That'd be a good shirt.
Michael
Canon
Timpy at Giga to Reader says, Catch You from Strangers in Paradise.
Strangers in Paradise is an amazing work about sort of the borders in between some of these identities and people who are
and if you're a Terry Moore fan, you must read Rachel Rising.
Rachel Rising is an amazing.
Rachel Rising is my favorite thing Terry's done. Once again, it's very David Lynch, but has a very prominent lesbian character in it. It's about a girl who wakes up in a shallow grave. She's dead, but she's not. And it goes places where I never would have guessed it would go, but was so thoroughly satisfying and is fantastic.
Spectacular read.
That's out. That's completely in print. There's also a really nice omnibus in print that's all 7 or 8 trades in one. It's a great read.
Lynn at name that I'm not going to try and pronounce. I'll always love Richter and Shatterstar from Marvel. Oh, and Zavin from Runaways. There's not nearly enough non-binary genderqueer representation out there. Richter and Shatterstar. Do webcomics count? This is from Ali Osworth.
Yes,
because these fine folks to great queer comics on Autostraddle. There you go. And then they
Autostraddle's
gave a link
website
to
I referred to earlier that had that
Autostraddle.
great rundown from fall 2015. They have a lot of good content, and they do comic-specific coverage. If you're looking for like good rundowns on characters and creators, that's a place to go.
Let's see. Lindsay C. at L. Christofferson. That Batwoman and the great work done on her by James IV and now Evil Marguerite. Cortland Patterson at Cortland is here. She hasn't gotten a lot to do, but Petrichor, and Saga. Also, Pied Piper shout out. Also, Wicked and Divine has a few queer characters worth shouting out too.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
Wicked and
Absolutely.
Divine is made of
It wouldn't be a Wednesday club if we didn't bring up Wicked and Divine somehow.
Yeah, no, we have to do
Please
it.
read Wicked and
We're
Divine.
required.
Cassandra's an amazing character. I don't want to give too many spoilers.
No.
At Servo Weeble Losey says John Constantine from Hellblazer, bisexual badass.
One of the, I will actually say for a lot of the kids I knew growing up, that was their first bisexual character that they read in fiction was John Constantine. So.
Aw. Bless his sexy heart.
Oh yeah.
Amelia Spark, Jane the Unicorn says, I'm head over heels in love with everyone and everything related to Lumberjanes. Let's see. Tyler Boyce at TBoys14 says, Asami Sato and Korra from Legend of Korra comic that releases in July.
He's counting the upcoming comics, but sure, let's count it. More
But
amazing rap in
didn't they
kids
make
fiction.
her? They made her gay in the final episode. Or they revealed
yeah.
that she'd been gay. Not made her. They revealed she'd been gay the whole time.
At Freudian Spud says, definitely Betty and Braga from Rat Queens.
Yeah, Rat
Yes.
Queens.
One Flaming Bear says, shout out to Koi Boy of Unbeatable Squirrel Girl for being the one trans masculine character I can think of. Let's see. Captain Cold and Brainiac, David S. Goyer and Jason Fabuk from Joe Boy Gamosha? Is that how you say it?
I don't know which version of canon that is, but someone was talking about Brainiac earlier in a rundown.
There was a version of Brainiac that was, and I want to say it was one of the Legion of Superhero versions, like Brainiac 13 or something.
We're
like
gonna
that.
look
But,
into that. Thank you for that recommendation.
The Legion of Superheroes is its own show.
That's
long-
That's its own show.
Yeah.
That's its
Well,
own
there were
show.
trans characters in Legion of Superheroes as well. There were
true.
lots of
Yeah.
trans characters and gay characters in there as well.
At Tooney-Zon, Joey Zon says, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Deadpool bi or pan?
Apparently,
He's-
sometimes.
He's whatever feels good.
Yeah.
And I was so I'm Josh Brolin, very talented actor, but I was so hoping my pitch for Deadpool 2 was John Cena as Cable, and they were a couple.
That would have been amazing.
Because that would be hilarious, and I kind of want to see Ryan Reynolds get railed by John Cena. That might be sharing
feel
too
you
much,
there.
but
No, I feel you
Why
there.
not, man?
fidget spinner.
Wasn't John Cena one who did that amazing commercial where he's walking through Heartland America?
yeah.
Yeah,
He's,
and just being
cried.
like, dude.
direct address, and he's like, these are people, just it's fucking cool, just stop with
That's
it.
a person.
Yeah.
This is a person. These are
Yeah.
people. It was great.
Yeah.
I'll throw a few. There's also
Yeah,
there's a lot of characters in Morning Glories who are worth mentioning.
Nice.
There's I want to talk about Sunstone really quickly. Sunstone is not a book for kids. It is definitely an adult book. It is dealing with sexuality and particularly the kink community and a lesbian couple in the kink community. It is a really well written
Say
book.
kink.
Kink community. It is an amazingly well written book about that community. It is.
And that's Stefan Sidjic and his wife wrote that?
Yeah,
and,
and
he
it's-
did the art,
That's the case.
and he's the new artist on Aquaman.
Yeah, and the art is stunning. And it is beautiful, amazing art. It is a beautifully written book. I highly recommend it for anybody who wants to see that kind of representation.
Oh, we forgot the alternate Marvel Universe, Logan and Hercules as a
Yep.
gay couple.
In the,
Yeah.
is that the Exiles book?
Exiles, right?
Exiles or X-Men, Astonishing X-Men, or one of those books. I forget.
Okay,
their
it's
name.
Exiles.
I think
We're going to
yeah.
get- we're gonna
and there's
get
an
credit.
alternate thing, and a lot of love for Ultimate Colossus in the
Yeah,
comics.
I was just about to say
Insane
Christian
comics,
Supiat at C Supiat says Ultimate Colossus, big rusky teddy bear.
Anybody who wants to go back and read the Morrison run of Doom Patrol, it is again, it's very, you have to give it a little bit of love for how old it is, but they deal with gender and sexuality.
There's a transgender street.
There is a transgender street as a superhero.
There's a street that's alive, a sentient street called
Danny the
Danny
Street.
the Street, who's a trans character that's amazing. And sometimes the shops are like dress shops, and sometimes
And
they're
it's like
bars.
sometimes it's like frilly guns and ammo shops.
Yeah,
I mean, it's amazing.
amazing,
Well,
amazing,
and
amazing
there
stuff.
are some of these that we encourage you to read with an eye on the time that they were made and the sort of the thinking behind them. There's a character in Sandman who, for a lot of people, was the first transgender character they'd encountered, named Wanda.
Wanda, yeah.
And it's one of those things which your reading experience is going to vary because certain things have sort of, we think about them differently now or they've aged
Well,
differently.
here-
But
here's-
it's a
there,
wonderful
and
story.
This is the perfect example for context. It's like if you watch the movie John Carter, a lot of people said, "Well, I've seen all this before." Well, actually, Edgar Rice Burroughs invented all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like if I've shown Citizen Kane to younger friends, and they're like, "I don't get it." I'm like, "See, but you don't get it because everything you've seen
tropes
has been
are-
stolen from this." So you have to be aware.
Tropes are a layer
historically.
cake. Tropes happen because you layer them.
Yeah, you have to be aware of some of these things were the first time this stuff was ever done. So
And that's groundbreaking at that time.
groundbreaking at the time,
Yeah.
and the fact that it feels familiar shows how influential it was because we've all been stealing from it for 50 or 70 or 100 years.
And some of these ones that might be considered
There's
problematic.
Danny the Street.
Yeah. Some of these representations that we might discuss as not having aged well or whatever, like no one says you have to love them. We're just giving them as much context. And for a lot of people, they were really important because any attempt was better than
I've reread
nothing.
Doom Patrol recently. It really holds up.
It holds up pretty well.
It's so smart. The Brotherhood of Dada.
Oh, the Brotherhood of Dada is one of my favorites.
I actually wrote a paper in college. I was a theater major about the Brotherhood of Dada and got my theater professor to read a Doom Patrol comic book talking about Dada.
That's awesome.
Well, like the quiz is like, I mean, what a fun, like the whole notion that it's like
That's
this.
a whole nother episode.
Yeah, well,
And all these, the Doom Patrols have been collected in big giant trays that are like $20 each for like 12 issues.
Nice new editions
and
of Doom
there's
Patrol are
and
finally
they
out.
carry and there's a lot, and not just identity, sexuality, and otherness. It is a book about otherness, and they do a really and after Morrison left, I'm trying to remember who took over.
Rachel Pollack, who's a trans creator,
who created the first, what I think might be the first trans superhero, because she added a character, and I'm trying to remember the name of the character who was.
and Rachel
It's
also
like a liquid or a metal, or it's the substance that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, but like who like tried to.
Rachel, also, you were saying.
That's the issue.
Rachel also did a long out of print.
Good work, Chief.
She did a
Magical.
She did a Sandman tarot deck for DC,
Which I own, and it's beautiful.
which is I'm shocked isn't still available. I'm surprised they haven't kept that available. So I'm not into
been out of print
all that
forever.
stuff, but it's a beautiful. I believe Dave McKean. Did
Dave McKean did the artwork, and I will say actually, I have books on, like, I'm a studier of the history of tarot and the construction of the.
Well, she's
the
like
symbolism.
a scholar.
It is
she's
it is
very
one of the
storied, learned woman.
I bought it because I thought it would be cute. It's one of the best decks I own. Like,
All right.
it is stunning.
We've got about 5 minutes.
yeah.
Who else do we have?
Voodoo at Bad Voodoo says, I don't know any bi-male heroes. Sure would love to learn about some. It'd be nice to be represented. I guess I'm out to any of my followers now.
By male hero, John Constantine.
By the way,
but yes.
I haven't responded to this, but that really moved me. Thank you for sharing that, for putting that
Yeah.
out there.
That's why I read it.
Yeah. Happy Pride. I'm not crying.
What's your
You came
Grindr
out in my
profile?
mentions. At Marc Andreyko.
It's all right.
I don't talk about it much, but I'm the B in LGBT, for the record. Doesn't tend to come up a lot.
Are we going there?
But, well, I am.
Yeah, I am too. Fuck it.
I'm a Kinsey 6. the only female nether reasons I ever touched.
Did you just
I
say
slid.
Kinsey sick? That's amazing.
That's right on the scale, right? 6 is 100% gay.
Yeah.
The only vagina I've ever touched was when I slid out of it 47
Yeah,
years
you were
ago.
done.
Yeah.
That was...
I have immense respect for it, but if there's something else on the menu, can I try that first?
So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That was incredible. But we mentioned John Constantine, sometimes Deadpool, Prodigy
Hercules.
from Young Avengers, Hercules.
God.
Prodigy.
We were talking
I
about it in the
actually,
last episode.
I took a screen cap of his quote when he comes out to.
It's a great coming out.
It's a great coming out, and I loved
It's from
it.
Young
so
Avengers.
I took a. Let's see. Let me pull it. He says basically.
yeah.
No, should I not?
No, do it.
We're running out of time.
We're running out of time. I realized, well, you know how my power would work, picking up everything except powers from people. Well, I got everything, skills, talents, and some other stuff. And when my mutation went crazy and I got everything I had ever absorbed, I got everything. And he says, Hulkling says, oh wow, that's a trip, wasn't it strange? And he goes, no, that's the strange thing. It was like an awakening. It was like realizing something that was always true and I just couldn't see it until now. It was like all the rooms in my head opening.
Like,
Didn't
all
matter
the
though.
rooms in my
Yeah.
head opening.
God, look at that art too. Oh man. Oh, one of my favorite artists.
So, all right, we should probably start wrapping it up.
Thank
This
you
person
so much.
actually says, Mr. Nobody says, Midnighter and Apollo from DC are great. They should adopt a child at one point. They did. They adopted Jenny Quantum,
Jenny Quaid. Yeah, that's
who
right.
was the reincarnation
child of the
of
century?
What a
the
good
Century
story
Child.
too. What a fun story.
You can see many more of these replies. They're on hashtag Wednesday Club, and a lot of them were just you all replying to my tweet from earlier in the week. Thank you so much to
Yes.
everybody who sent your creators and comics that you wanted to celebrate for Pride Month. Thank you so much for being here, Mark.
Well, thanks for having me. This was fun.
This was so much fun. It's so good to see you again.
yeah,
It's been ages.
it's been a decade probably. so.
God.
Where can people find you? We still have a couple minutes.
Twitter at Marc Andreyko, and then you can follow my liberal rants on Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
And if you're in Los Angeles, I hang out at Golden Apple all the time. It's sort of like I'm like Norm at Cheers there. Yeah, and I'll be at San Diego Con doing a bunch of signings and events. And
And
Love is Love
will
is
you
also
be-
nominated for an Eisner Award
yeah, I
this
was
year.
going to say,
so-
will you be attending the...
Yes, I will. Awards are great. For me, the biggest part of I hope it wins is sort of a thank you to everyone who contributed, because then they can all put on their resume that they're an Eisner winner, and it's always good to it's always branding is everything. So it'll be since everyone donated so freely of their valuable time, that will be a nice part of it. But I'll be there, and we're going to be doing some signings. Golden Apple is going to be having rolling Love is Love signings the whole weekend. I think it's going to be 3 o'clock every day. Whatever creators can stop by and sign stuff. I'll be doing some signings at the IDW booth and some signings at the DC booth. And then I have a project that's going to be announced next week that I wish I could talk about because it's so much fun.
We will retweet it.
It's going to be super cool. And
I'm going to spend the rest of my life fixing omissions that we didn't mention today, but the person responsible for Alicia Yo and a bunch of other representation is, of course, Gail Simone, who's been pushing the edges of great storytelling in that way for years. You can get more great, adults-oriented stuff of various flavors from Spike Trotman, who is absolutely fabulous, who you should be following online, and is on today's... I got to help with our comic book show, Roundtable, which is on Alpha.
And Prism Comics, the LGBT organization, they always have a booth at all the conventions. Prism, Prism. There are all a ton of LGBT out creators who do smaller press stuff that we didn't mention today. People from names like Justin Hall, people that do the Protectors and the Pride. There's all sorts of smaller press stuff that's really great, that is unfiltered voices of LGBT creators.
The Legend of Bold Riley is Northwest Press.
Northwest Press.
Right?
Zan Christensen, who runs the Northwest Press. Yeah.
My friend
really
Josh Trurio is also...
Josh is great. He moved up north,
he
though.
Moved up north, but
he got a real job.
He got an awesome job.
Yeah, he's like a video game company.
He's like... where he's writing on the Guardians of the Galaxy Telltale game right now.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, so we've got to start wrapping it up.
You can find me at Enthusiamy. Thank you so much for watching. We're this time next year, and every couple of weeks between now and then, we'll be talking about more awesome LGBT stuff in comics.
You can find me at Executive Goth, and also we didn't do a shout out to Batwoman.
Ken Wynn.
Thank you for this beautiful. Thank you for this wonderful piece, and our wonderful rainbow from Caleb. We got a rainbow logo this week.
Thank you, Caleb, who made our logo. I asked him to rainbow it up, and I was like, can you do that? And he was like, boom, look at this beautiful thing. And then Ken, when I was I explained the concept for this week, and he was like, here's a couple characters, and one of the two he picked was Batwoman. Well done.
Well done. I'll also say that if you go to geekandcentury.com, you'll get an article in a few days that will be a list of every comic book that we talked about, and oh god, someone's going to have to compile that.
At least some highlights, probably the wonderful Kelly Knox, who's done a ton of those for us.
It'll be amazing. And then
context or anything.
They are going through more.
Is there anything we should definitely shout out on our way out?
No, there've been a couple of people that have talked about coming out to various people. This person's name, I don't know. I guess they're posting it, they're tweeting it.
It's over here. It's not on Twitter. It's in our live chat.
That's our live chat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Aki! They said, I only came out as bi to my mom last summer. She knew I was ace, which I don't know what ace is.
Ace is short for asexual.
Oh, okay. She knew I was ace, but the bi thing was a later revelation. My dad still doesn't know. So,
thank you for being part of our community, Aki.
Thank you.
It is tough. The coming out process is everybody has their own journey and their own speed. And even when I came out to my parents, I didn't officially come out to them until Matthew Shepard had been killed, because I wasn't dating anyone, I wasn't lying about it. But even then, I did it with a letter, because when Chaz Bono came out to Cher was pissed, and I was like, wait a minute, And my parents, I part of the reason why I feel the need to give back is because I've had a very Norman Rockwell life. My parents have always said, even since I was little, do what you're passionate about. Don't do things for us, because you're gonna be doing it long after we're dead. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized that wasn't everybody's experience. So I feel the need to give back. So coming out, you do it on your own terms, and your father might know. A lot of times they know, and a lot of times they don't address it, not because they're disappointed in you or embarrassed, but because they want you to be the one to let them know. I had a guy in Florida, and I hope we have enough time to cover this, who came up to me and didn't look like the kind of guy that I thought would say this, but he came up to me after a panel, and he said, my little girl is gay, and she came out to her mama, but she hasn't told me. She's scared, so I gave her a copy of Love is Love.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So you can be guilty of underestimating your parents or overestimating your parents, but sometimes you're guilty of underestimating them. So I don't know your circumstances, but hopefully your father knows and is just waiting for you to be able to tell him on your terms. So good for you, and we all love you.
All right, well, we got to wrap it up. Thanks for being a part, and we will see you next week.
Can we announce next week's?
Next week's, yes, we should do it.
Did we confirm?
I think we've confirmed, but we need to wrap it up. So
we have to wrap
it
up.
7 p.m.
No.
We'll announce online.
We'll announce it online, and we're wrapping up. We'll see you at 7 o'clock next week at our new time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
There we go.